Well, Tom, it is the last Wedding Capture Co episode
Makes me sad.
of 2024.
Yeah, is it? Yeah. I thought you were breaking up with me. It feels weird, doesn't it? That's the end. We're done. No, I think it's mad. Like I listened after we spoke yesterday. I actually sat and listened to our end of year episode from last year, which is weird. I think that was episode 19.
Yeah.
And here we are now. It's episode 43.
Is it 43? Wow, okay.
So that means we've done 24 episodes.
Yeah, and it's been our first full year of podcasting as well.
One second, can I move? I feel like you're sat further back than me. For anybody that's not watching on YouTube, it won't matter. Like I feel like I'm talking across the table to you there. I'm going to retreat further back.
For anyone that is as well, you'll notice the Christmassy vibes as well.
Yes,
because obviously, end of year review, we thought we'd get our Christmas jumpers on. Got Christmas tree in the background. So
that's it. It's pretty much the one time of the year where we do flip the room around and have it recorded a different way.
A little visual treat for you guys.
And that's not just our faces either.
But yeah, no, so we thought we'd do another year in review episode. Again, like last year was a little bit of a negative episode, I guess. Like we both came out of it thinking, oh, I hope that's not come across too negative. But I feel like we were it was just at the point, recorded at the point of the year where we just weren't feeling too positive about what we were. So our thoughts on the year at that point, wasn't it? I think
so. And even now looking back, like listening to it a whole year, kind of in hindsight, it's kind of odd because there's quite a few things in there that I said at the end of that episode that I wanted this year to do. I definitely haven't done. And some of my goals for next year are the same ones that I set at the end of that episode, which made me feel a little bit more seen than I wanted to be. Like, I knew it then and I still haven't changed it. But on the whole, I think we've both come a long way with the pod and with our businesses this year, or the way that we kind of feel about the work that we make. And so I think it's going to be a much more sort of exciting, and I don't want to make it too self-indulgent and a pat on the back episode, but I do feel that both of us have done well this year.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think, again, like this is probably going to be very personal, but at the same time, I think a lot of people are going to listen to this and relate to a lot of the things that we say.
I really hope so.
But yeah, like you say, I think we've both come quite far this year. We both egg each other on quite a lot, and we've been helping each other out. And I feel like it's just we've elevated and become more of ourselves than we've ever been this year as well.
Yes,
so
I think that's fair to say. Yeah. Definitely.
So it should be a little bit more positive in that sense. But we just want to be candid about it. There are struggles and there are things that you can celebrate in the year, but there are also things you can look back and be like, okay, maybe that didn't go to plan. I don't know if I've said this on the pod before, but at the beginning of every year, I get a notepad out and I write down all my goals for the year. Some of them, at the end of them, I've reached them. Some of them I failed. Some of them I look at and I'll be like, why did I want to do that in the first place? Maybe I was just sat there writing on a notepad. It's different to actually getting out there and doing it. And if you don't do it, do you really want to do it?
And also, I think some of your goals change once, or you hopefully there are things on that list that you didn't even think were possible at the start of the year or not even occurred to you. And now they've actually happened as well. So there's almost things that you can almost look back and go, that was probably a big achievement. Yeah. That is something that I never saw coming.
Yeah, it's really important to look back, I think, and celebrate those achievements. Even though, as we can be quite busy and we can, something will happen and the next day you just forget about it and you're like, actually, that was really good. That happened. Like, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, and I've definitely done that. I think like we had a little chat before we jumped on camera today.
Yeah.
And I feel that. And again, I'm sure with video it's even worse. Like you said, you're still kind of struggling to enjoy that festive period or a period of rest that people are going into, when now is probably the time that your editing part is at its biggest, where I'm the other way again, kind of racing to kind of get my edits done so I can have that period of rest.
Yeah.
Is that, when we'll get into the weather and stuff like that, which I feel that this end of the year has been very different to the kind of the summer, we had one, and the earlier part of the year. And a lot of my bigger wins probably came in the first 6-7 months of the year.
Yeah.
And it's almost forgetting, actually that was this year, or that was really good, or that was a really big change for me, or that was a big success, because it feels so long ago. So it's quite nice to actually look back across the whole 12 months and realise that there maybe are some successes in there, which I probably thought were last year or forgot that had now have just become such kind of a part of what I do in the second half of the year that I forgot that was even this year. Yeah,
we were saying that like if you're too busy, it's really hard to look back on that stuff. And like when you're writing your notes yesterday, I noticed like certain patterns, and I came in this morning and said, I can tell you're writing from a perspective of someone that's still really busy and hasn't had time to reflect on what they've actually done this year and what you've achieved.
I think that is fair to say.
Yeah. But first we'll have a little intro. It's just been Black Friday as well, so I thought we'd have a little chat about if we bought anything.
Again, would it even be a capture code if there wasn't a little bit of tech talk? There wasn't a little bit of
And we haven't actually mentioned that this will be our last episode as well until the 2nd of January is when the next one will go out.
And also, I think as well, which I don't want to skip over the Black Friday stuff, but I kind of want to lean into it because Chris hasn't shown me the Spotify rap results yet for the pod. And I remember last year, it's really, really blown me away. And I've already seen on Instagram, us popping up in people's raps in their top 5 podcasts, which is amazing. And again, the conversations that you had with people coming up to you at Coda, when I've been out and about, people going, I've just been listening to you on the pod. That sort of stuff is amazing. And I think maybe sometimes, because again, we've said this a few times, it is just us two sat in my dining room having these chats.
Yeah.
It's hard to realise that hopefully this podcast has become a staple of some people's listening routine.
Yeah.
That maybe we need to kind of be a little bit more proud of that, or be a little more ambitious in maybe the guests that we can ask now, because they may be a chance they might have heard of our podcast and would want to come on.
Yeah.
We're not just having tiny conversations to nobody anymore, are we?
No, there's definitely, there's numbers behind it now. And it's really nice to get like a random follow on Instagram and then like you message them and they're like, I've been listening to the pod for ages. And it's just like, oh, okay. Like it's,
never underestimate as well how much happiness and kind of encouragement
really
that
helps.
gives us as well. Just those, if you listen to an episode and there's a little nugget of takeaway, like I chatted to someone the other day and they sent a message saying, I just want to say I'm really enjoying it. And I always try and get back to everybody as well and stuff like that. So if you kind of do feel that, don't feel that you can't message us or that we wouldn't reply to you or it's not appreciated, because it very much is.
Yeah. Every time someone comes up to us or messages us or whatever saying they're enjoying the pod, that's just another that inspires us to take it to the next level, really, isn't it? Yes. So I have on this table here this little light that I bought, and obviously for audio listeners this isn't going to mean much, but essentially it's a 60 watt light that I use for dance floors, and I used to use these lights called the Amaran 60X,
which are pretty big, weren't they?
And they're quite big, yeah. I don't really know what to compare it to.
Imagine the size of I don't know how many Gen Z listeners we've got. Imagine a CD in a CD case. Imagine if that was like a cube.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah.
Like it's like CD case size, isn't it? But like kind of as.
I would say it's CD size, and then stack a few of them. Yeah.
Well, the new thing that you have on the table is tiny. Like that's palm size. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's palm sized. It's basically the size of an iPhone, if not smaller than an iPhone. It's much deeper than an iPhone. But yeah, so these new lights, they're about half the size of the Amarans. I was running the Amarans off of like the so big Sony thick batteries, NPF batteries, and essentially, I carry a whole bag around basically for those Amaran lights. Like they're pretty heavy, they're quite big, and obviously they're 60 watt lights. They're going to be, but I only bought them like 2 years ago, and technology has come so far now.
Particularly with lighting, I think that's one of the biggest jumps.
We're using a light now which is the same wattage as this iPhone size light I've got in my hand, and it's huge, right?
That's huge. That's like the size of imagine like a 2 litre Coke bottle.
Yeah,
the light that we're using for this to record this pod. I pretty much bought that at the beginning of our podcast journey so that we could use it. I could use it for kind of talking to camera and stuff, but mainly for us to light the pod.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is crazy to think now in only the space of a couple of years.
A few years.
We've gone from that size to that.
We've downscaled to this.
For the same power.
Yeah.
No compromise in actual output.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the same power. It's like half the size. It doesn't take the big NPF battery, so don't need to worry about that anymore.
So has that got an internal battery?
No. So you can attach it. You can get a battery from Xeon and attach it to the side, but it doesn't last as long as what I do, which is I have a power bank, like a 25,000 or 24,000 milliamp hour power bank, and that powers it for about an hour and 30 minutes.
USB-C, so something that you would power your phone with or something like that.
Yeah. And what it's allowed me to do also is get lighter light stands, because these are much lighter than the lights I was using before. I'd have to use heavy light stands. More for health and safety really is because they're quite top heavy. So if you use like cheapy light stands and someone knocks it, it's going straight down. Whereas this is really light, but also the power supply, which is the power bank that I use, that sort of hooks over the light stand and sits on the bottom where the legs are.
Nice.
So the weight is distributed. Yeah. So I've now got smaller and lighter light stands and lighter lights, and it's just going to make for, I've ditched one bag, that's a whole bag that I don't have to take in the car anymore.
Not even some more of that as well, obviously, is like when you went away, you obviously went to Como this year and you had the destination wedding, you still need some degree of lighting, don't you? But to have almost a whole checked-in bag just for lighting and light stands, where at price you could probably take out one lens and stuff two of those in, and that's still, you know, your one bag, much more robust solution without a compromise to your lighting setup is.
Yeah, it's nice. Big, I took one of these to Como, I think, and that was when I was like, I need to get two, because for travel and that kind of thing, it is amazing. But also just like, you know, one of my goals, which we'll mention later on, is to I say cut down on equipment. I think it's make it a little bit smaller and just like trying to reduce the mental load a little bit. And taking the bag out of the car is one big thing to
well, it's one less thing to pack, isn't it? And to worry about or not forget at the end of the night when you're going home and stuff like that. And
but so Xeon X60, have a look.
And was that your only pretty much Black Friday purchase?
Apart from the one I do every year, which is I buy on Amazon Black Friday. They do quite a cheap Adobe Creative Cloud deal. And where my wife works at a uni, we also get the student one as well. So it's £115 for a year of creative, like the full Creative Cloud suite.
That's good. So I did it the other way. I bought the photography only one. So the photography package, I think I managed to buy a year of that for £62, I think it was. Where normally I pay, my subscription is like £10 a month, I think, to give you Photoshop, Lightroom and whatever. So that's so it's pretty much half price. It was.
It's good.
And also, but you can keep your subscription, and then they send you the card, you put the code in, and it just lumps that year onto your subscription. So you just don't pay for a year, and then it carries on as it would until next Black Friday when they do the same thing again, or Prime Day. And you can stack them as well. If you were feeling particularly flush and wanted to buy 3 years in one go, you could do that and just stack them up, and then they just won't bill you. So so I did that this year. It's the first time I've done it after your recommendation to have a look, and so it was a no-brainer to do that.
I recommend everyone to do that on Black Friday. If you're using Adobe, Creative Cloud is normally quite cheap on Black Friday. I recommend for people to do that.
So I did that, and also then I bought, which we spoke about, I haven't got it with me, but I just bought like a bigger power bank, mainly to use around the house, or if we go out and stuff as well, or maybe like down my little outdoor kitchen, it'd be handy. But then again, for powering, lighting, or even just sometimes I've had a couple of instances this year where I've gone to a wedding fair, and I've asked for power at my table. I've then had to like navigate extension leads and cable covers and things like that to kind of get to where I need to be. So to just buy this little power pack, which can charge, or hold it or run my laptop and stuff like that quite comfortably for a few hours. That was the main thing that I bought this year, and again for running lighting and stuff.
When you say little though, I think you might be underselling it a little bit.
It's definitely not little compared to your little Zion like on the table, but in terms of it's kind of like lunchbox sized, I guess. It's like hand size, sort of. Like imagine the size of an A4 piece of paper, but like square.
But
that sort of size. Fair, But again,
it packs a punch. It's 300 watts, isn't it?
But again, at a wedding fair, to be tucked under a table to power my screen and my laptop, or if I wanted to charge batteries at a wedding. I feel like venues this year are getting worse with kind of making sure that everything has to be pat tested and this and that. I still like to kind of avoid all of that conversation and just have something where I can run everything off of batteries. Festival weddings, I could run my laptop, things like that. So I bought that. That was pretty much that, and the Creative Cloud was the only thing that I bought as well this year. But it's been a big year for kit, I think, for both of us. Obviously, like in the last episode, that I bought the Metas while we were on holiday. I've upgraded both my camera bodies this year, so I'm using both Mark IVs. I bought the 1.4-35. So in terms of normally, I feel like things have flipped this year. Normally, it's you that's got the long list of upgrades. Where I feel that for me this year, I've probably bought more kit in a year than I have done in a long time.
Normally it's me going, I think you need to get this, or I think you should get this.
That's I can't think of what I bought. A year of seeing Chris every couple of weeks do a podcast, I've been ground down and had to spend some of that money.
I can't think of what I bought this year, to be fair. I've been really just like struggling to stop myself from buying that new Sony 28-70 f2. It looks so good. It
looks a beast. I saw I saw someone pop up on an Instagram story that they'd got it, and I was like, it's big, but it's not as big as the Canon one. That's what I took. So I'll shout him out. I saw Ed Godden's story. And he went and bought one, and he put a picture up of him kind of holding it on his Mark IV, and I was like, it's pretty much. I thought it's only a little bit bigger than the 24-70. Where whenever I've seen the Canon one, it always looks like cumbersomely big,
Yeah,
where this
it's huge,
doesn't.
yeah.
It looks like a slightly beefier 24-70, but to pack a f2 the whole way throughout and be the zoom range, I think you're going to see a lot of people switch into that lens. Yeah,
or switching to Sony for that lens as well, because the
Yeah.
Canon one, a lot of people stay on Canon for that lens, and it's like 1,300 grams or something,
Yeah.
whereas the Sony one's about 900, and my Sigma 24-70 2.8 is 800 and something.
Yeah,
so
so
it won't be
it's-
much more than
yeah.
that. So yeah, I'm definitely going to get that for next year, and that's going to be part of my whole downscaling, so that I only pretty much need to use that lens and maybe get out an 85 every now and then. But it's
Or the other way, if you are planning on investing in prime lenses, or moving that way in the new year, maybe hold fire a little bit, because I think there'll be a lot of people that'll be buying that lens and they'll be offloading their 35s, their 50s, their 85 1.4s.
Yeah.
And so you might find there's some deals to be had on Facebook groups, or even through kind of second-hand avenues. They might be getting a glut of those primes from people like yourself that are downscaling. So I'm definitely going to look.
Good point.
I want
Good
the
point.
85 1.4 next year. I'm still using the 1.8 at the moment, but after loving moving to the 1.4 for the 35, that 85 is definitely on my list.
Yeah.
But again, if I know someone that's offloading one because they're buying that zoom,
Yeah.
and there's a good deal to be had, it might force my hand sooner rather than later.
Again, though, we're switching over because I had 1.4 fever last year, or and until sort of mid this year. But now I've been shooting more like 1.8 2 anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't really feel like I'm needing or using the 1.4 as much as I did before.
I think for me, it's not even about the extra stop. Like I still firmly loved my 35.
It's just the character.
The 1.8, the character. Again,
Yeah.
I felt far less precious about it if it got knocked about and the rest of it. But I think just the look of that 1.4. I think it's
something about it, isn't it? Yeah.
And even just the speed of focus. I think my 1.8 definitely drunk too much champagne, and that was getting a little bit kind of janky towards the end. Like having something which is responsive. And quick.
Wasn't it when you shake it? Wasn't it making noises as well?
Oh yeah,
It's like-
but aren't all lenses supposed to do that?
Are they really?
I don't know. My 85 does. Maybe it's just the added Langford quirk. I don't know.
I'm sure there are some that do, but I don't know if it's all of them. But
Lens
yeah, maybe.
/ maraca.
Bust it out on the wedding day. Last thing is as well is you want to shout out the guys from the other podcast, because there's another Videographer conference, isn't there?
There is, yeah. Well, they're calling it a summit, aren't they? More
summit.
than a thing, which I like that. It sounds like some sort of like government, like a meeting of minds type thing, which I think it is. So,
Like a
so
summit
that's
of
the guys
presidents.
from, and it sounds like I'm being really derogatory, the guys from That Wedding Videographer podcast.
Which is
but that is
actually
actually
what
their
it's
name.
called.
So, I think it's and you said you met them, didn't you, at Coda?
Yes.
And obviously we did our fair share of shouting about Coda, and I think that we've probably been naive to think that we don't have very, very similar audiences.
Yeah.
And so I think, it's worth shouting that out. That's happening in April next year,
Yeah.
isn't it? Again, we're a very much south coast of England podcast, and they're a north of the
Completely
borders
opposite.
Scotland
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
So that is a Scottish event which is happening. So maybe if you are one of our more northerly listeners, or you fancy jumping on a plane to go up to that, then definitely check out them on their socials and that event, because it's just nice to see things happening for videographers, isn't it?
It is. Look, like I love the guys. They're like meeting them. They're so funny. Like it was such a laugh to spend time with them. And obviously they're doing great things with their podcast. And I think this is kind of the natural next step for what they're doing, because what they're doing is they're growing it fast. They're making it big. And to have something else again for videographers, like we raved about Coda for a long time about how there was nothing like it for videographers. Now, not only have we got something like it in Coda, we've also got choice in the summit as well. And it's going to be different speakers, so a whole unique experience. They're not all videographers as well, so there are some that are can help you in other areas
of your business. I think that's really important as well. I think it's really nice to have. So there's going to be a copywriter coming along. There's going to be a website designer coming along. So I think it's giving you, although that the majority of the people that do go probably will be videographers, they're giving you a lot of those tools that you need to further your business, not just inspiration and looking at really cool films from amazing videographers, which is obviously maybe more what Coda was about.
Yeah, Matt Johnson though, come on. It's like a celebrity. Like everyone loves it. Anyway, so the Wedding Videography Summit, take a look at it. Danny and Jace, well done.
Yeah, fair play to you. And I think the other thing as well as Coda, I feel has occupied our tongues on the podcast a lot this year. The other thing which kind of met its conclusion a couple of weeks ago, or last week maybe, was obviously TWIA. It's been happening over the last couple of weeks, hasn't it? We spoke to Damien back in the summer about the competition. I entered for the first time. You entered for the third time. And then we had to wait. South Central Awards, which is the category that we're nominated in, was the last event out of all of the awards, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And
I suppose Damien when it arrived, and it was like, I was like, it's the last one, and are you feeling knackered? He was like, yeah, I just want to go to bed. He was like, we had a nap on the sofas before.
But again, fair play to Damien as well. Like, it's a huge undertaking, isn't it, to do kind of the scale of the competition, the amount of people, when he reeled off those numbers of the amount of people that enter, the amount of judges there are, the amount of films they have to watch, the amount of photos they have to look through for not just our categories, but every category. It's a pretty big undertaking, and to do then 10 live events pretty much in a row.
Yeah.
As well,
it is impressive. Like, and they're all big events as well. They're all like well managed, well organised, and even though it was the last one, the energy was still there from all the teams. So it was good.
It was good, and you won.
And I won. Yeah,
you won. Yes.
So third time lucky. Finally got the win, and super happy with it. So
I think you deserve to be. I was maybe feeling much more confident for you than maybe you were on the night. But and so Chris won. I didn't. That again, I'm okay with it. I'll be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit disappointed. But fair play. I think the three highly commended in our category, and then obviously a winner. I think that probably shows just the level of talent on display. That there was no other category all evening that had three highly commendeds, and then a winner. Really, really happy for Catherine that she won. It's always nice to have someone that and whose work that you like that wins. Again, I'm sure whoever would have been a worthy winner over me, they've been judged in the same categories and same standard that I have. But it's always nice to see that if you don't pick the prize up, that someone that and his work that you like does. So it was really nice to see her pick up the win.
Definitely, and that's part of the thing with these awards is you can never expect to win. Like you said about being more confident for me than I was. I went in like just not even knowing what was going to happen, because you never know who's going to win. Like the judges are obviously judging a lot of people and judging them based on a lot of things. And so you can never expect to. And I find that particularly with photography, there is such a huge range of not only styles in what you actually do, but styles in what you show. You have 10 photos to show. Like that, you've got to summarise your work.
I'd not really considered that, because obviously I only look at the entrance kind of category or the criteria for my own entry, which was that. But I was chatting to Rachel on the night, who's a makeup artist, and she was saying to me, we did this and that, and she's like, how do you pick 10 photos? And like for her, she was as a makeup artist, she was saying that she submitted a mixture of kind of before and afters that she takes on her phone, or if then photographers send her professional stuff, it's almost displaying what her actual craft is, where the photos themselves are my craft. And after we listened to the episode from last year, like we spoke about that at the end of our last year in review, saying about that in a year I can take potentially sometimes north of 100,000 photos in a wedding season, and maybe only deliver then say 20 something thousand, which is still a crazy number. 35 weddings, 800 galleries, still some, and then that comes down to 10 photos. So even from what I deliver, I get to show them probably not even 0.5% of what I shoot.
You've got taken at the top, then you've got delivered, then you've got probably website, then Instagram, then 10 which is.
But then I saw this pyramid. It popped up on Instagram a while ago, which someone shared at a conference. So forgive me if it was you. And it really and that was that. So it was a big pyramid, and it was at the very base level. It was moments that happened.
Yeah.
And then the next one is moments that you saw.
Yeah.
At a wedding.
Yeah.
And then from that, it's moments that you saw that you managed to take photos of.
Yeah.
Then that's the ones that get cold. Then that's the ones that get delivered, and then that's the ones that end up on your portfolio.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the tip of the iceberg, and that's insane, isn't it? To think of all of those things. So I'd maybe found it harder, particularly it being my first entry as well. Is that there's no actual time limit on when the photos have to be taken. So for someone that's been taking wedding photos for over a decade, you're like, what is the pinnacle of my work? And I can choose anything, because I almost wouldn't want to use work that I could next year. I could use work that I submitted this year. You probably wouldn't want to.
No.
So it's hard, isn't it, to know? And I find it is really, really difficult. But it wasn't to be. But again, I bought a fancy suit. We both were very smart, didn't we? In our evening wear. The sheer volume of messages that I had from other suppliers. My couples that obviously voted for me, I got some really lovely messages in the lead up to the evening, kind of rooting for me to win and stuff like that. And so I think for those things, it's looking at the bigger picture of kind of the process of entering the awards. Like I wouldn't have got any of that if I hadn't have entered. No. So I think that alone has spurred me on enough that I will enter again next year.
I think the marketing of even being there and just having finalists there is great for not only the couples that have already booked you, because they will be raving about how you were at the awards and things like that, right? You're in the pool, but also people looking at you as well. And then other suppliers as well, who, like you say, like have messaged you and reached out, and it gives you a boost of confidence. I got an overwhelming amount of messages from suppliers and couples and like people, I hadn't spoken to in a long time, just coming and congratulating me. And like that feeling alone was hyped me up so much as well. Like after, like the day after and the day after that sort of thing, I was feeling more and more happy about it, because at the time you're just kind of like, wow, it's just happening, and a little bit dazed.
And it isn't it that
and then
moment.
We just went home, and it's like just sat there like, all right,
like
okay.
when you're sat there and and the winner is, and you kind of watch awards on telly or you see that, and until it's you that's your category, and you're sat there kind of with bated breath, like knowing is your name going to come out of his mouth or not. Like it is kind of like peak nerves, isn't it? Or kind of. And you feel like it is such a culmination of what it is. And in that moment, maybe like for me, when it's not your name, it's hard to not go, oh. Yeah. Because I think naturally you're so built up in kind of adrenaline of that moment that it's hard not to kind of have to deflate it. But then I think overall, say from the message that you've had, or even just the feeling of the night, there was the feeling of community in that room as a whole was incredible. Everybody in every category seemed equally as pleased for the winners. There was no, it should have been me, or any of that. Like everybody was genuinely really, really happy for everybody that did one, and everyone was really happy to kind of be in the room. And as a community of wedding suppliers, that was a really lovely feeling to just be part of that and know that level of support is there. Yeah, definitely. That feeling though, when it's like, and it's your category now, and they didn't do them in alphabet. I think last year and the year before maybe they did the categories in alphabetical order. So it's like videographer was like last. I was just sitting back, like, my head's and then the videographer, and I was like, what? Yeah, and we were quite early on, weren't we? I think they kind of subcategory, like they had a couple of first ones, and then he hit kind of photo and video, pretty like probably a 4th or 5th awards maybe. Yeah. But you do get like, I was like shaking a little bit, my hands were like sweating, and perhaps maybe, I do put too much into it, too much self-worth into winning the awards or whatever. But I think though it'd be hard not to, especially coming off the back of highly commended the last 2 years. You'd like to think that you'd least like to get to that level again, because even though it's so subjective, I think it would be hard not to feel that if you didn't even get highly commended that you're going backwards. Especially when you you've said, and we've got into it, that we both feel that we've had particularly strong years this year. If you hadn't have won, would you have felt, well, is the direction I'm going in not right? Am I going down the wrong avenue in terms of this? But I think now to get the award or to pick up the win, then move on to the nationals, I think that's a real big affirmation that what you've done is. I'm really looking forward to the nationals as well, just for the event really. Like I love the fact that like I'm going to be surrounded by like people at the absolute top of their game, and for me the pressure is off, because I feel like I've done what I wanted to do now. The nationals, there's a lot of talent there, and so who else is up? I don't think I even have a slight chance. Here we go. So from what I can remember, films by Lewis, Adam Wing, Thompson Films, and some of the others. I don't think I've heard of some of the others, but I'm just happy to be in that pool basically at this point, and the pressure's off, because I don't feel like I deserve to win it. I don't know. I think it's it. It kind of to be too humble to go, it's not me. But I think again there is some top talent in there. But I think that your name is definitely you definitely have an equal as chance as anybody else. And I know when Rue came on the episode, he spoke about a similar feeling, didn't he, going to the national, and how that all the videographers met up before and kind of had that, so they almost kind of went into it equally rooting for everybody else. I really hope that something similar happens for you this year, that kind of, again, because now this is the national category, and same as that you met people at Coda that were maybe live further away that you don't get to catch up with in person. If you get to travel up to Birmingham and kind of see those guys before you go into the awards and stuff, that'd be cool. And we'll all be rooting for each other as well. There's none of that like you sort of get there on the day and you're like, oh, that's that person from the other videography company. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I feel like there will be some sort of pre-drinks or something like that. But I'm excited for you. Yeah, it's exciting. You should have brought your trophy. See, you brought a light instead. You got a lovely little trophy saying I am the best videographer in the South. And I bought a light. And you bought a light with a condom on it. Thoroughly deflated. Right. So I think that's kind of more of the kind of that's more of the life lately stuff kind of out the way, isn't it? So I think now that since this is a year in review episode, we should probably kind of jump into kind of maybe some of those highs and lows
And I feel like it might be a
for the
long one
year.
as well, but that's fine because we are missing a week in a couple of weeks' time.
Well, hey,
so
we're sat recording
hopefully-
now. We have no idea how long it's going to be. If it ends up being too long, we've got a week to play with. We'll just split it in 2 parts.
Yeah.
We've done that in the past. So.
Yeah, but equally, I do quite like when you get into a car and listen to a podcast and it's not quite finished yet, and then like the next journey you do, you've still got another 40 minutes to listen to, and you're like, okay,
pick
it's
it up
fun.
where you
then.
left
Yeah,
off.
So yeah, first in this sort of year in review, what I like when I was writing the notes, the first thing I did is listen to last year's and see what had changed, the vibe of last year's, and address those points. Because in a year in review, it's always important to figure out where you were last year, because then only then can you see if you've gone forwards or backwards, or what you need to do to improve, or what you've done to like negative, basically. And so I want to address some of the points from last year, and we've already spoken. Have we spoken about weather, or did we do that in the
We
chat
briefly touched upon it, didn't we? Yeah.
But a lot of some of what we spoke about last year was about the second half of the year being a bit tough in terms of weather. While I don't think that's changed this year,
No.
because we both agree with each other on the fact that our best halves of the year were the first half. Like up until sort of mid-July, things seemed to be going really well, and then it was just like most of my July, August, September was just raining. So and obviously that's different depending on what dates you have weddings on, and obviously you're still filming people's days. You can still make a good film out of it for them, but sometimes you come back disheartened that perhaps like it's not what you wanted to make.
It's an expectation, isn't it, as well? Like, I think I found, and I think that's probably one of the catalysts in probably my thoughts of it, is that in much in the same way that if you listen to last year's year in review, you had about a third of your weddings of the year in July. Yeah. Which wasn't the sunniest July on record, was it? And then this year the same. So I think I had 8 or 9 weddings in September this year.
Yeah.
And it was probably one of the wettest Septembers that I've ever known. And normally, I always love to book September weddings.
September's great normally.
Because normally, you're very much like, it's not quite as warm as the summer, but the rain's got out the way kind of in August.
Yeah.
And it's normally my perfect month. I love the time of year. I love the way that people's structure of the day falls, the temperature. Everything about September weddings is normally. Yeah. So I went into the year thinking, it's good. Like, I've got a nice steady year. Hit this really September. I'm going to make hay in my favourite month to shoot weddings. Yeah. And then I did a triple header of some of the wettest 3 weddings that I've done all year in that one weekend. And again, I still made lovely galleries. There's some really lovely moments in the rain in them. But I think when you've got that expectation of normally that's my favourite sunset month of the year, and that there wasn't even sun, let alone a sunset, it definitely has made an impact on maybe my overall kind of radiance, shall we say.
And if a lot of your weddings fell in that month, which means that now, as we're doing this, you're probably editing, or you have edited.
Just finished editing them, so I've had,
Yeah, so the last few weddings you've edited have all just been rainy, dark days, and when that affects you anyway. Like, dark days affect you anyway. But then if you've got to watch them back and like look at them and try and make it look. Our styles are quite positive, I feel like, as well. And you're trying to, bring up that colour and the energy and things like that, and trying to do that from a rainy day is definitely a little bit more difficult. So that is harder. But you got a snowy day, didn't you, as well, recently?
And that I think is the ultimate kind of flip side. I think that is really kind of the silver lining in those dark clouds, which I've photographed plenty of this year. Is that I had 2 weddings in November, and I remember doing the final call for this particular wedding like 2 days after we got back from holiday. So I was still sat there very much feeling the cold, like sun-kissed fresh from the boat in the Caribbean, and chatting to these guys about their wedding and being like, I think the weather's looking like it might be okay, like can't guarantee warm, but it's going to be bright. And she was like, I don't know what forecast you're looking at. So far it's saying 35% chance of snow. And I was like, wow. But this wedding was on the south coast again, and we live in Portsmouth. Their wedding was like Chichester, West Sussex way, and I was like, well, will it lay?
We never get snow
here really. Like, I was like, I'll believe it when I see it. And then obviously it snowed loads the day before, and then it started to dry up here, and then started to snow again the morning of the wedding. And I was like, like it's a barn, and it is kind of like it might happen. And then I literally drove towards Chichester, and it was drying up, and then as I turned the corner, you could see the snow still sat on the hills, and I was like, it might happen. And it almost looked like something through some sort of like Wizard of Oz fairy tale. Like, I seemed to turn the corner on this country lane, and then all of a sudden I was into like winter wonderland, and there was like snow hanging on trees. Got to the barn itself, the car park was still like an ice rink. All of the hills around it were still white in snow.
Wow.
And I managed to again get through the ceremony, through the drinks, but even in the courtyard, all the trees there still had like little icicles on them. And the couple were so overjoyed that they had this like white wedding that I took the couple out for the couple shoot, and had this real panic because the sun actually came out and I was almost getting like sunset and
Whilst
snow.
the snow,
But then I was like, but the sun's going to melt the snow. This direct beam of light is going to melt the snow. So we need to go now, and kind of rushed to get them out.
Yeah.
And hadn't considered again that snow is freezing cold. And when you've got her bride, bless her, the lovely Sally, who's literally wearing like open topped, like high heels, stomping through like 2 inches of snow, it looked stunning.
Was she struggling
but
a
her
little
feet
bit?
were like blocks of ice by the time that we got back to the thing.
It looks amazing.
But again, in terms of those things that I said, I think in that Instagram kind of story that I put up about it, I've been shooting weddings for a long time. I've done my 350th wedding sometime this year. That is the first one as someone that lives in kind of the tropics of the south coast of England that we actually got snow, and it was incredible. It was so good.
I mean, I've lived on the south coast since 2012, so what's that, like pretty much 12 years now?
Yeah.
And I've only seen snow lay for more than a day once, I think, in that whole time. So yeah, it is a little bit of a treat for us, isn't it, to have that? And your photos from it did look incredible, and I was very jealous.
Yeah, that's my next wedding on the pile to edit now. So now I've kind of got through the rain and stuff. Almost, I feel that the wedding that I've just delivered as well was a really, really good day, and I've kind of come through that kind of monotony of, again, lovely days, but kind of the same wet, like kind of this, like something which is maybe less. The prospect of editing that is less exciting, but now that I've just done a really good one, now I've got the snowy one to do, I'm feeling that buzz is coming back.
Yeah, I just messaged you, didn't I? I was like, I hope you bought the Ray-Bans, the Metas to BTS it. But
I got so caught up in the excitement of the sunset and the snow, they were still in the top of my bag. Yeah, really excited to edit that one now. And so for every bit that maybe sometimes bad weather can be challenging, it's nice to know that sometimes it does do you a solid and give you something as incredible as that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So that's a bit of a positive to end it with, sort of thing. The other thing we spoke about last year was exhaustion. Like I think we both were very tired on last year's episode. I know my backlog was a lot more last year than it is now. I don't know exactly how much it was, but I know that I was due to finish quite late if I carried on the speed that I was editing. You said something about like towards the second half of the year starting crawling across the finish line, and we were both feeling that kind of exhaustion. This year I put a lot of measures into place to stop that, and it seems to have worked. Like my evenings are very much, I reserve 2 evenings for calls with couples. I'll never meet couples like in person because I don't think it's necessary. Obviously you might have a different opinion, and I keep to working hours. I don't work weekends unless it's a shoot either, and just a lot of things like that have all added up to, obviously I ditched corporate work, ditched YouTube, that kind of thing, and focused entirely on weddings, and all that's added up to I just don't feel exhausted this year, and I'm quite proud of achieving that sort of thing in a way.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, and it's definitely something that I said at the end of one of my biggest goals for this year, which I said in the last episode that was yesterday, was to kind of address that balance of, again, kind of putting in measures to prioritise kind of exercise and well-being and stuff.
Yeah. And
I think for the first few months of the year, I did brilliantly as it hit that September backlog. And ever since then, I was on that kind of run into manically editing before we went away. And then since I've come back, I've been really busy. My commercial stuff, if anything, has taken a slight increase this year rather than decreased. And I think between that and a couple of other things, it has meant that I have felt pretty much since September pretty much solidly busy, and I have done my share of late night, not weekend. If I've not been shooting, I have tried to keep that for family time, but I think it's been so easy to go back to my desk in an evening or kind of later, stay at my desk later in the evening, and I think that's hard. That has kind of led to me feeling tired, but also like I enjoy my work, and this is kind of the real crossroads that I'm at, is I do love my work and I like it, but it's constantly on my mind, so I need to find something which I love just as much, or kind of be more conscious to have something to pull me away from my desk more. And I think because it's just easy to go, I'll just pop back and do that, or just do this, where I think like with you, and you go on to that, obviously where you started playing paddle, or you've almost been really militant in no, you do not go back to your desk, is that maybe like you've made those kind of, you've set those boundaries and kept to them. I think that maybe that's what I need to do more, is actually start to look at that in a more mindful way, because I think it's, I don't know if I put this in the notes kind of further down, is that I feel like this year I'm at a point now, I've been doing this long enough that most of the weddings that come along are really good and I want to do them. A lot of the commercial projects I'm being offered are really exciting. And so that natural kind of excitement, you're like, oh, I really want to be part of that. And that fear of kind of, oh, well, if I don't do it, like they're going to give it to somebody else, or I really want to do this, oh, I'll fit it in. But it's looking at that as a bigger picture, as what is the consequence of just fitting this in and just fitting that in, is that I can't work as much as I have.
But I think, doesn't this like summarize like we've spoken about our attitudes to this whole business thing quite a lot, and you're very emotional driven, and I'm very analytics driven.
And I feel like my wedding work this year has been even more emotionally driven than ever before.
Yeah, definitely. But so where I'm approaching it in this many hours, this needs to happen, this needs to not happen. You're approaching it in if I get this job and I really like it, I've got to take it.
Yeah.
Or, you get to the end of a day, you've got, and it's really easy to get to the end of a day, go and have dinner and then be like, well, I'm only going to be sat watching TV. I might as well go and do some work. But if you keep doing that those hours add up, your mindfulness changes, your attitude changes, and your sort of the way your body reacts to all of that stuff changes. And before you know it, you're stressed and you don't know why. And because all you've been doing is sat at the office editing for, at 8 p.m. and you think, that's all right. It's not strenuous, is it? But it's the whole mindfulness thing. Like when people say to you what really matters to you, you wouldn't say being sat in the office editing. You'd say all the other stuff.
That's the conversations I think that I need to have. Like, and it's even something that I've started. Maybe you can't probably see it, but my house has quite a lot of things in it. And I really feel that that's kind of one of the biggest things this year as well. Is I've really started to ask myself is that I don't actually need lots of stuff or lots of things. Like if you ask me the things that I enjoy the most about my life, my work is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
But it's simple things like having a nice cup of coffee, taking my dog for a walk, sitting in my ice bath in the morning. It's all those things that don't require a lot of stuff or a lot of whatever to do. And so I feel that that's kind of, we'll get towards goals at the end, but that's kind of where I've turned that corner. Is I need kind of something to pull me away from my work, because I find I do take a lot of reward from being that emotionally involved in work, but at the same time it does come with particularly a physical and a mental cost sometimes, that because it takes up so much of my emotional sort of headspace,
definitely,
that it's hard to switch off from that when you're not at work. But then I'm also aware that I'm going to turn 37 in a few weeks time, and I probably still feel that I maybe, I speak to couples about like running, that sort of thing that I still do, but I've neglected that terribly this year. And so maybe if I can set a kind of, like something more rigid in my diary that is non-negotiable, like you have with paddle or stuff like that, is that to start to have those much clear kind of boundaries about, or even if I have to set, like to book it in my diary so that I actually do it rather than let a meeting wander on, or I can just squeeze some editing in there. I think that's probably... I know that I can't carry on working as much as I have the last 2 or 3 months. That's it. It's finding a reason to do anything else, because it's completely right to think, I've got low level of anxiety about my backlog, so I'm only going to watching TV, so I might as well do that. But like you say about setting those like barriers, you've really got to draw a line. You don't have to, obviously. Like there are people who work hard and they don't get as affected by it. But drawing the line and obviously like taking up paddle, and part of like finding those kind of hobbies for me was all about stopping myself from working so much. And someone messaged me when I won the award about like, you're definitely the hardest worker I know, or whatever, hardest working videographer. I was like, I wish that was true, mate. I literally messaged back and said, I wish that was true, but I literally go to paddle at like 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't get back till like 12-1 sometimes. And so I'm taking a big chunk out of the day, and I refuse to work evenings and weekends. But because I have that mindfulness and I come back all refreshed and I've done something I enjoy, I edit quicker and things just get done quicker. I think it's that, isn't it? It's giving you that efficiency. Because you know that you don't want to compromise on not going to paddle, so you make sure that times you still get the same amount done. And I think that's the problem with me, is at the moment it's like, I could just do this. And I know sometimes, and a lot of it's a personality trait, is that if something's broken or I get a bee in my bonnet about something, that's all, it consumes me, and that's all I want to work on. Like if I'm like, maybe my website's not doing what it needs to do. That's it. Tear the website apart. I want to work on this. And that's just what I want to do. But it's really hard to kind of then think about anything else. So that's the time that I'll stay up till 2 in the morning doing this one thing. And I'm not the most efficient at all about it. I could make much easier changes with it. But I just need to do it. Do you know what I mean? It's just, but like, and I can't not, it can't leave my brain.
No,
and I know that in the end it takes me twice as long as it needs to do that one simple thing. But it's like, I need to work on this. Where if I just went away, actually had to think about it, and then came back and did the thing, it'd be done a lot quicker.
It's approaching it from an outside perspective, isn't it? It's stepping back and writing down the things you need to do.
And it's, I don't know.
But I think that's natural, especially as creatives as well. We always want to be doing everything, updating our website or Instagram, everything like that. And I know sometimes, as organised as I make myself out to be, I'll sit at my computer sometimes and I'll be like, right, I've got an Instagram post to do, I need to edit this film, I need to do this, I need to do this. And I'll sit there and then I just stare at my screen and I get a little bit overwhelmed by it. And then I have to just write it all down and then split it into chunks and
Well, I think we spoke about this before as well. Or I imagine what we said, obviously, with a videography edit, is you almost need that space to be more creative.
Yeah.
Where the thing that I love most about my job is I'm creative on the wedding day. I love being around people and kind of vibing off people and the energy of a day.
Yeah.
And the capturing's then, in some ways, the editing bit is pretty much colour grading and curating.
Yeah.
So it's not always exciting. So you can almost be a bit more matter of fact about that. And I know that if I'm within 100 images of finishing that gallery, I'd stay the hour later to finish the gallery.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, I know exactly what I've got to do. Where if you're just staring at an empty timeline and it's not coming, you could be there for days trying to get some inspiration, but maybe that, after 20 minutes on a paddle court, something springs to mind because you've had that space with it. Where I think sometimes, like editing, you can almost argue is almost like you can put it on the same list like an admin task. It's just something which is very kind of clear beginning and end for me. It's just a case of, can I get through this?
Yeah.
And do that. So I think sometimes there's probably tasks that I could, or exercises that I could do to make me more efficient in that process.
Yeah.
Even alongside the use of Imagine that I've been still using this year with great success. But it's still kind of, you can factor it in the same way that, okay, that takes that time, or I can do this in the same way that you factor in doing emails or whatever.
Yeah.
Where I think maybe with your job, you almost need like that to be that artist sat there in front of the blank canvas going, I need to be inspired to create.
Yeah. I think, that's very true.
And that's where I need, I think, that mindfulness before a wedding. Like I always make sure, when we did our pre-wedding rituals one, that like for me, that journey on the way to a wedding or something, that's my emptying myself of the stresses of anything. I'm almost getting in the zone to
Whereas
create.
we need pre-editing rituals because we need to be in the zone to create in the editing, and that's where our main work is done.
We're at a wedding and maybe you can afford to kind of go into it kind of a little bit more because you know that you're kind of, that bit maybe is more set.
Matter of fact.
For you, So it's interesting, Yeah.
And then just skipping ahead a little bit, like couples this year, I find a lot more responsive to my films I've been finding. We said last year that like there was a few people who just like didn't respond, or and you pour your heart and soul into your work, don't you? And then you send it, and sometimes couples don't respond. Or we mentioned that like I'd say by the end of the year, most people have acknowledged that they've got their film and they like it. But it's a case of like a simple email saying, "Oh, thank you for sending this over. We love it." Whatever is absolutely fine. But last year it was coming in like people weren't feeling the need to respond, and they were like, I said last year that I was posting on Instagram, and then I'd get a comment saying, "Oh, we love you guys. It's been amazing." And I'd be like, "Well, why didn't you say that to me rather than a comment on Instagram?"
I think though that's for me as an outsider watching your year though, and again we've done more weddings this year together. That we've done 4 or 5 weddings together this year.
Yeah,
I feel from working with you this year to even working with you last year or in previous years that you are so much more confident not only in your work but in yourself.
100%.
That you are so much more of a presence now on a wedding day than you ever used to be. And I think that was one of the things that we mused about last year, is sometimes maybe why you didn't get those gifts or thank yous is that not people never forgot your product, but because you never engaged with them on a personal level maybe as much as you do now, is that when they were writing those cards or whatever, there was you did your job, but there was never maybe that extra kind of encouragement or personal level stuff.
Yeah.
Where I feel like this year, particularly a couple of the weddings that we've done, like we've almost been spoken about like we work for the same company. It's been, Tom and Chris have done this, Tom and Chris have done that, and I think that's come through. So maybe once people have left the wedding and doing their thing, they're like, oh, do you know what, Chris really helped me with this, and that's why there's been that need to want to send you a picture of their cat watching their film with them, or there's been the gifts have come, or that acknowledgement's been there because you've worked with people on a much more personal level than just being the videographer on their day.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And this is something I've been thinking about recently, how, when I started, and even up to like a couple of years ago, I probably didn't get involved really much at all. And I would, like you say, I've become a lot more confident as a person recently. And so, and I've also just become a lot more tuned into weddings and couples and things like that. Through conversations that we've had, through getting married myself, and just generally like as I'm getting older, I'm just getting a more confident person in who I am, and so I do get more involved in the wedding days now, and I do get closer to the couples, and we have chats, and we're on WhatsApp. I'm on WhatsApp with them, which breaks the barrier that emails have of like professionalism. And yeah, so I completely agree with you on that. Yeah.
Which I think is good, and I think is something that I think when I listened to that yesterday, that was one of the points I think that made me kind of smile to myself, that you were like, I don't get gifts. It's just videographers don't, and it was quite a like that's how you'd resided it, and then kind of over the. It's nice to see that to see that difference that in the course of a year that has really changed, and
people just been so grateful.
Definitely, I think in terms of kind of people ignoring me, it's almost flipped that my couples want to talk to me more than ever, which is great. But inquiry ghosting, I feel, is much more of a problem now than it was last year. Yeah. The amount of inquiries now that you respond to to an initial inquiry and get nothing back.
Yeah.
That's happened loads more this year than it ever did last year. But once I've actually got on a call with couples again, or even once a couple have booked me, that conversation, that relationship building, I think has been more important to me than ever this year. And because of that, I've had couples which, I shot their weddings in the early months of the year and we're still talking now, and they will probably stay people that will always pop up on kind of my Instagram or on WhatsApp and stuff. And I really like that. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because I think that people are shopping a lot more now for a start, and that might be why the ghosting is coming in. To be sort of devil's advocate, I've not really experienced more ghosting this year, but I have, people are actually responding and saying, I've gone with someone else or whatever. Fine, that's I'd rather that. But yeah, I think the bookings have been a bit harder to achieve. Like I'm having to put a little bit more effort into Instagram and marketing and things like that. Maybe, and there are a lot of people at the moment saying next year is just a weird year, isn't it? Yeah. And I think most people are doing okay in terms of the amount of bookings. It just feels like you've got to do a bit more to get it now.
That I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think I'm probably sat here with 2 or 3 less bookings than I had at this point last year. But there are times where I feel like I've had to work a lot harder. Yeah. Like and again, maybe we've spoken at length about this kind of throughout the year. Like coming out the other side of COVID, there was a glut of weddings. I think people sometimes took it for granted. Yeah. But I think now there is a lot more choice out there.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's never been easier to find a bunch of good creatives in your area that do whatever. Yeah. Or also, I think that the way that kind of trends have kind of emerged more than ever, or more prevalent than ever because of sort of TikTok and Instagram and stuff, it's harder to stand out.
Yes, yeah.
And I find that even scrolling through my Instagram feed now, it's only those few people that have got such signature styles that you go, wow, I know that's theirs before I've looked at it. Yeah. There's a lot of people that tend to be kind of grouping themselves in.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think that's something which, and again, I think I've been guilty of that this year. Maybe I found it, my inquiries have been slightly less, but I've still got, again, a similar number of bookings.
Yeah.
But I think I maybe, particularly in stories, have maybe changed the approach less, or maybe shown up physically talking to my camera less. I've maybe done a few more text-based stories, and this is just something off the top of my head now, that maybe that's why, maybe that level of sort of, like, again, the work is not the thing, it's the showing up as a person
that separates you,
that allows people to kind of buy into it. So maybe that's something which I need to maybe push on a little bit more again, is do that talking to camera, and maybe that'll allow people to stand out as the person behind the work as well as the work.
Yeah, that could separate you. I've seen a lot less people doing talking stories this year.
And maybe that's why I've done less, because maybe I thought like people don't want it anymore, so the trend's moved away from that. But at the same time, when I saw my biggest uplift in inquiries, or maybe got those couples that then really understood me and my work, and we aligned on lots of things, maybe they saw that from seeing me.
Yeah.
Rather than along with my work. So maybe that's something that, although sometimes it does feel that you are just talking into a void, or that you're waffling or whatever, people are seeing something within that is warming them to you.
Yeah, because it is, you book the person, don't you? Especially, like you say, when all the work's pretty similar. Yeah. And I do think your work is very different. But most of, we all sort of, neither of us do anything dramatically different to anybody else, basically. Yeah. We just hone in on certain things. But my theory is that your inquiry sources will dictate how many ghosts you get.
Okay.
So I think if your SEO is amazing and you're top of Google, you're going to get a lot more people ghosting you, because people are clicking you because you're top of Google and probably inquiring with the first 5 people on Google.
So they're inquiring out of convenience rather than out of love. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. That is, I've heard sort of proof of this, but I don't have proof. But whereas with my sources, a lot of my sources are either through Instagram or through other photographers and other videographers. So that's the most valuable source of bookings for me, is other suppliers, because people trust them so much that they're recommending somebody else. And so grateful to any photographers and videographers listening out there who have me on their list, like, because it has got me a lot of bookings for next year, scarily so. But that, because of that's where most of my stuff comes from, people have already been recommended to me, and therefore they're more likely to book me because they've had that point of contact.
But again, though, a lot of that avenue source is fed by you.
Yeah.
If you worked with
true.
that photographer on the day and you made their life really difficult, or you weren't a pleasure to hang out with and get on with, they wouldn't recommend you. They're not recommending you. And again, probably a lot of times, even sadly, I've worked with probably, yourself, Josh, and probably 3 or 4 other videographers this year. But it's very rare that sometimes I even see the film. I'm probably in it.
Yeah.
But it's very rare that I actually see it.
In it.
Yeah, but it's very rare that sometimes you actually see it or even get sent it. And so if that relationship's not there, it's not based on the work, is it?
Yeah.
It's based on their experience of spending that day with you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's,
and how you made them feel
that
as a
comes
team.
around to that personal kind of brand, not only with the rapport with your couples, but also, let's be honest, I think that now that it's going to become even more so next year that, sat around that lunch table, there's probably going to be a photographer, a videographer, and quite often a content creator as well.
Yeah.
And if people are loving what they do and they're coming to them and going, oh, we really want you. And she goes, well, I recommend you book this photographer and that videographer because they're not mean to me and they actually let me get what I need as well as getting what they need.
Yeah.
Then that's going to become more of a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So.
You really see couples' faces light up when sometimes on the pre-wedding call they had, like when they inquired, they hadn't booked a photographer. Yeah. And then when you get to the call, they have, and they say to the photographer, and I'm like, I've worked with them before. Yeah, we work really well together. And they're like, oh, you're on their list and whatever. And suddenly they light up and they're like, oh, actually, this is going to really work.
Yeah, because they've almost probably seen both of you and then they go, I really hope they like each other. I really hope they're not going to turn around and go, no, I don't work with that person.
Yeah. I do think the inquiry source does matter, and that's maybe why people say SEO doesn't matter as much anymore, because with SEO it's still a cold lead in a way.
I think the world is changing. I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like we were even saying this, or we were talking about when we earlier in the year about good SEO or blogging has always been kind of the backbone of a good SEO game, particularly with kind of getting venue-based leads and stuff. Yeah. But I think now, and again, we're sat here as the generation that we are, is that I now, a lot of times, you go, oh, I want a recipe for this when I'm making dinner, or I want some, or even a venue pops up. I go, I wonder what that venue's like. I don't go to Google anymore and type in that new venue name. I go to Instagram and type in the venue name there, and I want to see a photo of it. So, and maybe that's just because I'm a photographer. I don't know. But I'd like to think there's couples doing that, probably doing the same thing.
There is, yeah.
Or they're going to TikTok and going, show me something about this. And it's like, what now, or what used to be considered as prime search engines, Pinterest, Google, that YouTube, like that field, I think, is being leveled a little bit with social media. So as much as Instagram still needs to hit hard in the way that it does with kind of attention grabbing posts and reels and etc., is that sometimes it's making sure that all that location stuff and tagging and stuff is on point. Yeah. Because people are using it to search as well.
The hashtags are definitely used. Yeah, 100%. You see that just from people who, inquire, and the little thing on Student Ninja that says, where do people find you? And we have a little bit that says, like, tell me more or something. Like, so if it's a person, then they can tell us who it is. And some people say, you were collaborated with the venue on Instagram, or, we looked up the hashtags of the venue, and you start to realize how much that actually matters. Because when you post it and it gets 50 likes, you're like, okay, got likes. Yeah. What's the point in that there? Like, likes mean nothing.
And I think as well, people have always, we've always been educated that Instagram has always been a series of quick wins. Yeah. Where kind of like good blogging and stuff is your foundation. Yeah. And I wonder if that, like you say, it's starting to change. Yeah. Where sometimes, you can't just go, oh, I'm changing my edit style. I can't just delete everything on my Instagram and then start afresh. Yeah. Is that sometimes those posts that have been there for a while, even if they've been sat there from a year or two ago, if it's a venue that you love shooting at and maybe your inquiries have dried up, is don't delete it, because it might end up that all it takes is one venue search for them and your hashtag you're on there hits right and that gets you the inquiry.
100%. Yeah. Should we move on to some of our thoughts of this year then? Yes. After we've been talking about our thoughts of this year, so some of it's already covered, but we were just sort of having a look at last year and what's changed. This year, and I think we've both said this about our work, is I'm making the best films I've ever made in terms of what I want to make. Yeah. Like, I think I'm walking that tightrope between the fun, energetic stuff and the more like classy looking stuff, like the stuff that's going to last the test of time. You know, it's not crazy transitions. It's not, you know, grooms throwing people up in the air. Like, it's a little bit less of that, but it still has the joy element of it. I'm really focusing on joy. Yeah. And I see that back when I'm watching my films. It brings me the joy because on the day I can tell that I've really honed in on that. And this year I just feel like it's been better than ever. And obviously, like, that's why I was happy to win the award as well, because I was like, it's kind of that self-affirming, like, I thought my films were better than ever. Now I've got something to almost prove it. But yeah.
Oh, I agree. And I think also it's nice to kind of feeling that you've hit your stride of, it's not like, oh, I feel that the industry is moving this way, so I need to make these films in order to keep up.
Yeah.
You genuinely are. I think you found a really lovely balance.
Yeah.
In, you know, that kind of one. I think doing the early branding workshop that we did, I think made us both take a far closer look at our brands. Obviously, off the back of that, you rebuilt your site. And it's something which a couple of people in the second branding workshop that we did, and you've seen in yourself, is that with this wave of editorial that's come, there's no doubt that the weddings that you've shot this year and are looking to shoot next year and the venues that you're going to, you probably are starting to work with maybe some of those more editorially style photographers, but your work has still kept that narrative of fun throughout it.
Yeah.
It's almost just fun now on a bigger budget.
Yeah.
Like that, you've got much more black tie or wedding, you know, guys in white jackets, and that aesthetic is so there, and the venues are quite posh and quite esteemed places.
Yeah.
But your couples aren't conforming to that. They're still not okay to have those big belly laughs and those kind of really fun elements.
Yeah.
It's just a much more kind of refined,
be less traditional
fun.
about it.
There's much less smoke bombs and throwing people in the air now, which is your old version of high energy.
Yeah.
But then you look at the dance floors and some of like the singing and stuff that you've had this year. It's just a more grown up version of high energy and fun, isn't it? And I think it's a perfect balance of your films are a perfect balance of what you've put into it or what you show. Definitely.
100%. Yeah. It's really nice that you see that, because it's pretty much, you've just summarised spot on what I've been thinking.
Yeah, and I think it's hard. And when we spoke about it, I know with a couple of guys at the workshop, is that you, I think, are a living proof that you can have both. And I think that was a belief that maybe that was littered throughout a lot of our episodes last year.
Yeah.
Where you were like, I'm working with loads of editorial photographers.
Do I need
or
to
I'm
go
starting to get
luxury?
loads of these inquiries and I'm not sure I want them, or I'm not going to put my price up because I don't want to only do these. But you found a way to command those budgets, work with those people, and still make something which is incredibly unique.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, I mean, I've said this to you on a voice message yesterday, but I think that your work has become so much more concise to you and so much more true to you than it has ever been as well. And I think that again, like, storytelling as well is huge with your images. And I feel like maybe last year was the Tom that posted on Instagram when you thought people would like what you're posting, and this year it's the Tom that posts what you really enjoy.
I think it's true. I think I've had to consciously care less about the likes.
Yeah.
And almost, and whether some of it's getting older or some of it in the end just having a belief that that storytelling drum that I want to bang about this is important, is that there are people out there that do want it. And I've had a couple of times this year where I've posted carousels of only those sort of B-roll or more storytelling moments.
Yeah.
And they've done pretty well. Like in terms of like, so it shows that there are people out there.
It's different. People want
it.
Yeah.
And so, but then I think it's, again, once you're shooting weddings every week and you're making new stuff, it's easy to have that out. But as I've come into the end of the year, and again, maybe I've got more stressed and more doubtful of your own ability, I feel like it's hard to then go, oh, well, am I posting what I love, or am I posting what I think people want to see?
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to keep that. But I think as a whole this year, I definitely have lent into that element of storytelling, or almost that kind of not just being there to tell a matter-of-fact story, just being a little bit more loose with it, maybe including some more black and white frames, maybe some frames, like not embracing the blur because it's a trend, but I really love that idea of movement in my work, or things that aren't quite, again, technically perfect, but they have such an amazing feeling about them, where before I'd kind of maybe would have buried those in galleries.
Yeah.
I've actually had couples come back to me this year, like I shot a wedding in September, and she actually like singled out 2 frames in her email, like, these frames are the ones, like, I didn't even see this. And one of them was like, during the speeches, she had her hand on her husband's knee under the table, but there was no tablecloth on the table, so I shot a frame of, you can see his kilt and like his hand on her knee. And again, maybe sometimes it doesn't always translate that well as a single frame, but it was something which meant loads to her because she probably forgot that she even did it. And it's that sort of stuff that I've been brave enough to go, no, this is what I need to be posting. It's hunting out those little moments that I feel like I've worked hard enough to see on the day.
Yeah.
That it's that, but then trying to also then balance that with enough safe stuff to kind of lure people in.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, do I need to lure people in? Do I just need to keep posting that stuff? So that's what I've become known for.
Well, I feel like other than like your personality on the wedding day, which is like you're a big character on the wedding day, and your couples tend to love you. I know that from rocking up, and I'll rock up to weddings with you sometimes, and everyone's like, I was like, Tom, and then I'll be like, hi.
Yeah.
But like people love you. Other than that, your skill, like, in my opinion, lies in that finding those moments, like with the hand on the knee and things like that. Those things that just mean so much to people. But on the flip side, are they also harder to post on Instagram because they mean nothing to the average person watching them? And so what you're feeling is the response to that is that
fair.
But no one else understands this photo the way I do, or the way the couple does.
Yeah. And I think that's it, because some of that work is so personal, and I still firmly believe that I make my work for me as much as my couples.
Yeah.
But in order to understand their story, it takes that level of personability to know that thing means what it does to them, because I've had those conversations with them. But it's hard sometimes in a sea of things which are super polished and pretty and editorial to almost let people kind of be that emotive or open or free. It's hard to get a hook with that stuff.
Yeah.
But once people do get on a call with me, or once they book and we go on that journey, I would say that this year more than ever, I've been getting couples which are much more, once they're on that journey, they're on it, and they love that work that I've made for them a lot more.
Definitely.
And I think the relationships, like I said earlier, with couples this year have been the best they've ever been.
Yeah.
And that's really something I want to carry through into next year. I just need to make sure now that what I put out is authentically me, and hopefully enough that I can find enough couples going forward that does speak to, that I can get the work that I need.
Yeah, because your work is, or what you're showing is different to what other people are showing. The people that do book you have a deeper love with your work than they would do if they booked X photographer who if they showed someone their work, it would be quite similar to the other photographers they looked at.
Yeah, and it's hard, I think, because I've said this a few times, I'm quite a needy person, but I want to be needed, but also I value that relationship with a couple. I don't want a couple that send me a 2-line inquiry and don't care who I am. I want someone that have booked me for me and to go on that real journey. And the things that we said earlier about the exhaustion and the rest of it, that level, is I know that in order that, the emotional factor or that takes up, I can't do that with big numbers of couples.
No.
So going into next year, I know that I have to, even if some good stuff comes along, is buy that sieve with the finer mesh even again.
Yeah.
And when those inquiries do come in, is almost have that conviction to go, no, if they are not 100% into that I have to turn it away, even though I'll go, it could be fun. I really need to kind of, in order to give all of me and them to give that back, I maybe need to look at that with a much finer comb.
But do you? Is there an element of like it's still a business, and like I already know that I've taken some weddings next year that I'm like, I don't know if they would have booked me had they not been recommended by X person. You go on the call with them, you're like, they're nice enough people. I don't feel like they're gonna have like perhaps the vibe that I normally get for weddings that are Spice Wedding Films weddings.
Yeah.
But it's not. There's no red flags there, so I still book them in.
I think as a business, you probably can take those.
Yeah.
But as a person, do I want to? I think that's the problem I've had this year.
Yeah.
And the fact that I have had such a wealth of commercial work and other projects and stuff on, I've got to the point, if I have, and I haven't had many, maybe a couple of those this year, I walk away from them feeling even more deflated by it. And I feel that, again, if I'm going to spend that time away from my family or spend those late hours at my desk pouring it into a gallery, I want to make sure I'm spending the hours on something that people are going to genuinely love and appreciate.
And it brings you
not
joy.
Just someone that's just because they've paid my rate.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where maybe limiting those numbers, because I want to limit so I can still keep an element of my commercial work, because I think that feeds me as well, not just doing weddings.
It's knowing that they'll appreciate it.
I would love to know whether you'd find that this year, that by not doing other things, whether that is, although it's allowed you to solely focus on weddings, has it meant that kind of you haven't had your cup filled creatively in other ways?
There was a point in probably August, September, when I felt like all consumed by weddings, and I was like, sometimes I was like, oh, maybe I do need something to take me away from it. But then I realised that something doesn't have to be work, and that's where like paddle and like I've been sort of very slowly learning the sax as well, which I've not really said before. But yeah, so like my instinct was to be like, oh, maybe I need to take on different types of work, and I was like, well, this is my work. Why can't I just leave that as work and then do stuff that creatively inspires me in other ways?
Sax is still, it's a creative endeavor, isn't it? Where maybe paddle's more sport based, and it's a time factor, and you're learning, improving at it. But something like the music instrument is still like a creative thing, and I think that's what I'm wondering. Maybe is that because again, photography started as a hobby and then it grew into a business, and there's still, again, I've been working on a really long term project with an art gallery, and I did a fine art photography degree, so I kind of feel more validated as an artist in this more than ever, as well as a business person. That I kind of think selfishly now, like maybe do I want to blur the two even more? But at the same time, that business person in me, which has kind of been sparked over the last couple of years, is thinking, well, I'm not doing that for nothing.
Yeah.
Like it's almost being kind of boastful enough to go, no, what I am doing carries value, and I shouldn't give that away for anything. That energy or that skill has a price.
It's the joy. Does it bring you joy? Does it make you money? What's the balance of that? And all that adds up to, is it worth it? And that's the case with weddings, corporate work, whatever else you're doing. But it's also the case, I guess, with each individual wedding.
Yes.
Like how much money is it bringing you, and is it going to bring you joy? And if it's not going to bring you joy, because when you go out and speak to the groom, he's like, well, I'm already ready, mate. I don't want any shots of me getting ready. Or like, are we are we done yet? I've got 5 minutes. I want to get back to the pub.
And I think it's that stuff that makes me sad in the end. Like if that's their wedding, it's fine. But then I almost feel sad that it's like, I could have been, I mean, if I've turned down a wedding to be at that wedding, when I think, well, that couple would have really appreciated. I could have made something truly beautiful for them. And I still do for those couples. But I still want to know that it lands. Like nobody paints a masterpiece, have it shoved in a cupboard, do they? Like they want it on people's walls. Like they want it to be appreciated. And I think that's maybe, that's it.
I think it's just that we put our heart and soul into our business, right? So there's always, I find that there's couples that, are liking after their wedding, they're liking everything, comment on everything, that's amazing, still love it, and you think you're so excited for your film and you're so into it and it's amazing. And then equally, like you say, you'll get other people who maybe on the day they just seem less bothered, and so when you get to edit it, those two edits will be very different, because one person is extremely passionate about getting this video, and it's going to be like that's all they're waiting for, they're probably talking about it every day at work, and the other person just is moved on, they can't be asked. Basically.
And I guess it's that more emotional, more art driven side of me that wants both. I want my cake and I want to eat it, but then I don't know if that's wrong to want that.
No.
Or do I have to want to settle to go, it's just the nature of the job that we do, that you'll probably do 20% of the jobs of the year you'll do for money, and 80% you'll do to fill your cup. Like,
but you wouldn't be thinking any of this if like education and Instagram and whatever didn't exist. Like the Instagram and having so much like content around us has forced us to like slowly move into this bubble where we're all quite similar, and to stay on the outside of it feels like, oh, should I really be doing this? And and that's what you're feeling, I guess.
And it's something I've put in my notes, John. I say when I went to Thrive, and I've been going to that conference for a long time, and I saw John Dolan talk in March, doing that, getting his book, almost pushing me back into my photography books rather than scrolling Instagram this summer. Like before a wedding or the night before, being sat looking at documentary or storytelling photography books rather than scrolling Instagram to see what the last 6 photographers at that venue have done. That alone, I think, has been really, really helpful in kind of getting in that right headspace to create. And so I think having that in March and seeing John do that with some amazing and really high profile clients, I think that's really kind of helped me build that confidence, or know that I've maybe been scrolling less or dictated to less about my wedding's Instagram. And I'm sorry if there's photographer friends out there which I don't follow anymore or I don't see their work anymore. But hopefully that it means that I've not just been inspired to be another one of somebody else. Yeah.
And I think that's a positive thing. I don't think you should feel bad about that at all. I think what you're doing is cracking, and it's what ignites your spark, isn't it, at the end of the day?
At the end of last year, I remember driving home from some of those late weddings, feeling really tired and feeling this, and almost going, how much longer can I do this? Not only just from a creative point of view, but from an age point of view. Like, am I still going to be relevant? Am I still going to be this? Am I still going to be that? Where I feel now that I'm not old going in it, but I've been doing this. The next year will be my 10th year running weddings by Tom, which is a fair amount of time. Is that I feel that the style that I'm moving into speaks to me, but it transcends age and the thing of that. If you are that kind of person or that kind of soul and you value that, a lot of those kind of real trendy demographic things don't really matter, and I could still be making that work in 10 years time as I am now. I don't need to kind of be young and cool and stuff to be doing that.
There'll always be people that think like you do and are thinking of how much they'll appreciate what you do in 20 years time. Or and hopefully those people that I'm shooting for now will still appreciate their galleries in 20 years time, because it is based on far more things than a series of trends, or you know, they're still there when like TikTok's evolved into whatever it is then, like clutching their reels that someone's made them, because that's what they spend the most time on their day. And you're attracting creative people as well, which you get on with and you can relate to.
And that's a huge factor as well, I think, is that like level of, and that between doing the workshops, doing this podcast and stuff, is that I've almost come to realise as well, like how much joy there is in collaboration. But collaboration with people that are as excited about that thing as you are.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So just technically a little bit, in terms of like how I've been enjoying the year a bit more, I'm just making shorter films than I was last year. I feel like last year I was still doing like a lot of 15 to 20 minute films, and I've discovered my sweet spot, and I love 10 to 12 minute films. I think at the moment that's the spot where I think if I've got 10 to 12 minute film to edit, I love it. I can get into the flow of that. And like maybe you're leaving some stuff on the table. That's what the keepsake edit is for and things like that.
But you've sold more of those than ever, haven't you, this year, the keepsakes?
Yes, yeah.
Because I remember, again, after listening to last year's episode last night, you saying then that you're looking into next year, you're like, people are booking lower packages, which means shorter films, and almost we're kind of a little bit, I'm going to have to take on more work to make this work. But now it's almost like, well, no, there's value in a short film, because that's the sweet spot of getting the best content out of them.
Yeah, well, I'd say like 10 to 12.
You get to fill them as much.
If you start going 6 to 8, then you're probably not getting what I would consider to be a good document of your day. If that makes sense, it's still a good film, of course, but I would be shortchanged. I'd feel shortchanged with 6 to 8. I still offer it as a package, but then if it was me and I was getting married, I'd probably go for the uncut edit as well, just to make sure, you know, I've got the nice looking 6 to 8 minute. Like that, the Como wedding, for example, they did that. They went 6 to 8 minute film with 2 of us. And then they decided with the keepsake edit as well. So they got 2 of us and all that footage, but they didn't feel like they needed to see it in their nice, highly polished.
So they've got the polished thing, which is short and sweet to kind of show off to everybody, but they've got the longer edit for sentiment.
And I think that's a good middle ground, somewhere around 10 minutes, and then get the keepsake edit with it. So I've always been like shortening my films and keeping package prices similar. But now I've raised them back up again, so the 4 to 6 gone up to 6 to 8 again. It went down to 4 to 6 at one point, and I was like, what am I doing here? I can't make a whole wedding film 4 to 6 minutes.
I remember we had a wedding at the start of the year, didn't we, that one the ones together, and then by the time they had like singing waiters and they both did their own vows and something else, and you were like, this is only a 6 minute film. Like there's gonna be so much that, like, some chunks of it that you either trying to put literally snippets of everything in, or some stuff that I'm just gonna have to leave out.
You can't put one shot of a singing waiter in and leave it at that. It doesn't tell a story. But talking about that, so I went down to 1 minute trailers for a bit, because a friend of ours said that, like, you know, if you're doing 3 to 4 minute highlights films and then 10 minute films, you're kind of like almost making the same thing twice, like you're giving yourself more work. So I thought, you know what, business decision, I'll do less work and cut it down to 1 minute trailers. And then I realised I don't like trailers. And I can't put my finger on why. I think it's because I like to tell a full story, and I don't like to create something that doesn't tell that full story and it's just showing a few nice shots and whatever. And, you know, it's great for a reel, but for a trailer that's going to live on, I want it to tell a full story. And so I raised 2 minute package back up to 2 to 3 minute highlight, or 3 to 4 minute highlight. But that trailer that you're talking about then is still like a horizontal, like watch on a screen type thing. We're not talking about, like, because you obviously introduced a couple of weddings you did almost like reels for, didn't you? Like quite quickly afterwards, to kind of give that immediacy and stuff to it. And they can be, because they disappear after. No one's going to watch them after they get their full film. But I feel like with the highlight film, like 3 to 4 minute, I always wanted it to be something they would still watch back. Whereas if you make a 1 minute trailer for someone and then deliver the film, I feel like they might never watch that 1 minute trailer again. I know I've not watched mine since getting the long film. So
but I guess in the same way that when you have a trailer though for like a movie,
Yeah.
That's precisely what it is, isn't it? It's shown before other movies to make you to want to go and watch the movie. And once you can watch the movie, or you're not sure if you're going to like a movie or not, you watch the trailer.
Yeah.
So, but then I guess that's not there when it's somebody's film. Hopefully they're going to all want to watch their own film.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
but then they get that like sort of slightly more documentary approach for their 10 to 12 minute film, and they get something that they can show off to their friends in a 3 to 4. So it's a best of both worlds.
But when you've done the reels throughout the year, then that's always just been a purely, I've wanted to, or I've got the footage.
Yeah, I never offer it.
There's never a deliverable on the package.
Yeah, it's always just, I found this part of the wedding a vibe, or I want to do this, or I'm feeling particularly motivated.
Do you think that's something you'll do more of next year, though? Because again, obviously, I kind of keep half back to last year, but obviously we both own the metas now, and we spoke about the metas in the last year's episode, and like, have you seen these glasses that they do?
Yeah.
And after then you, by January, had yours.
Yeah.
And then I only bought mine recently. Like, that was something that you could almost make your reels based purely on.
Yeah.
On that footage.
I've got some content which I need to use. I feel like I'm trying to keep an Instagram balance between posting actual films that people can watch and see what my work is actually like versus the reels, because the reels are always going to be a little bit more honed in on one particular thing. So I might make a really high energy reel of, there's one that I've got online which is through the metas, and it's the Prosecco spray and everyone going crazy and that kind of thing, and then the BTS of me telling them how to spray and things like that. But then the next one might be like a really romantic reel of like a really cool couple shoot at sunset. And so that hones in on one thing. So I don't want to be posting too many reels and narrowing it down too much.
But it still gives you vertical content to share then, where your other films are like a letterbox in a vertical.
Yeah, BTS is definitely easier now, and I've definitely got more footage. But in a way, I might have too much because I haven't posted any of it yet. So I need to get on that, I think. But yeah, a little bit of a negative, I guess, is I've seen a fair drop in income this year. I rave on about how I've dropped corporate work and dropped YouTube, and I'm so much more mindful and relaxed now. But at the end of the day, I've probably lost 5 to 10k this year on from last year's income.
But this is what I wanted to ask you, because this is obviously something that I'm looking at next year, is that I want to do less to have some of that time back. Is that my belief at the moment is, well, yes, I'm going to be quieter, but all of the things that I want to do in that time that I'm going to have back doesn't cost money.
Yeah.
So if anything, if I had 5 to 10 grand less, is it worth having the less money to have the time? And that was something which I wanted to ask you.
Yes. I would take years. Like, I think I'll be more prepared for it next time because I didn't do the math basically before and realise. And obviously we went to quite like some big holidays and that kind of thing.
And you all live to your means, don't you? If you're used to earning a certain figure, you come to spend that figure because you know that there's always that's hopefully what's going to come the following year.
Yeah.
But to take a decision, which is quite a conscious decision, to probably actively earn less, but to have the time back to enjoy it. That's what I wanted to make sure, is that I'm definitely only going to do this many weddings next year, and then go, oh crap, how am I going to pay my mortgage?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, as someone who puts a lot of thought into how they're going to earn more money next year and how they're going to manage their finances and whatever, I have much more. I've enjoyed this year much more than last year, despite earning 5 to 10k less. I feel like again that the whole mental health thing is just is worth all of that. And it's only been a blip as well, because I've been focusing on weddings. I've now been able to raise my prices to a point where next year I'll be earning the same as I did last year, whilst doing the same amount of work I did this year. Does that make sense?
So it is basically a 1 step back for 2 steps forward.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
But walking into that a lot happier.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So next year, I always go on based on averages. If you do 30 weddings at 2.5 at 75k, and then there's other small little tiny things that will come in that will make it up to. I never want to go above the VAT threshold at the moment. I'm not that bothered. So if I can keep around the same amount every year,
I think as well though that you get to a point where, like, obviously as business people, you always think, oh, I want to earn them more, but then there starts to become jumps. As soon as you hit that, then you have to take another leap forward in income to earn the same. And then again, as a one-person business, you think, well, how much is that going to compromise my happiness? The amount of time I'm going to have to spend to earn that money to still end up with this much in my pocket at the end. Yeah. It's doing all of those sums, isn't it? Or knowing what you want out of, like, our businesses aren't destined to be scalable to astronomical levels. Yeah. Unless you can get to a point where you're charging, like 100 grand a wedding and doing 30 weddings
or associate in every wedding. Yeah.
You're not going to get a point where this job is going to make you scalably rich, or you're not going to end up on the Forbes list from being a wedding videographer. But to know that you can live a life of balance with enough things in it that bring you happy, doing enough work to keep your creative cup filled, but also earn enough money to go on those nice trips, live in a nice house and drive a nice car, or all the things that the money gives you.
Yeah.
It's kind of a balance of all of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess is the...
And that's always the aim, isn't it? Balance. So yeah, I feel like it has been, one step back, 2 steps forward, because next year is looking good, and I'll have to do less work to get it. So that's always a benefit. And again, like this year, I think I had a strange one this year, because some of the early bookings that came in for this year were booking my low package. And at one point I was looking at bookings for this year thinking, everyone's booked my lowest package. What is going on here? And I don't know whether it's just because things have like improved for like in terms of like the crisis and whatever, or because maybe I had an imbalance somewhere of packages. It's a very sort of, you're walking on ice when you do 3 packages.
Yeah.
Because if you do it wrong, everyone's going to think one is such good value.
Yeah, because we spoke about this in the pricing episode and other things, that sometimes you weight one package to almost force people into doing that package because it seems like a better deal if they are unevenly weighted. But then I think also, for things that we kind of know to be true, is that if you're saying that those lower packages came in the earlier months, we tend to know from things that, lots of people say, is that, the best bookings come, in a shorter duration to the wedding.
Yeah.
That maybe all those people that were booking you at the start of last year for next year were 12 and 18 months away from their weddings. They're the people that are saving a bit harder for their weddings. They want to be more mindful of the budget. So they're probably booking smaller packages back then because their wedding's a long time away. Where now that the couples that are maybe spending more money when their wedding's nearer have got more money.
Yeah.
So that's why it's not only that thing, it's a kind of time of the year thing as well.
It is, yeah.
Is that if someone's booking you in January for May that year, or someone's booking you in January for May the following year, they're probably in 2 very different kind of camps of affordability.
Yeah, but you can't say no to it at the same time.
No, you can't. No.
You don't want to play chicken with it, and in January be sweating because you've turned so many people down because you think that like all the best bookings come in late.
All your dates free for the
high
more affluent
bookings.
couples. They don't come.
So there is a part of that, isn't there? But yeah, so talking about that, inquiries, you've been like,
I feel my inquiries have been lower this year.
Yeah.
Not they've not fallen in half or anything like that.
No.
But I think I probably am, again, probably sort of 10% down on the amount of inquiries that I've had.
Yeah.
But I feel like my inquiries have come in waves this year far more than ever.
Yeah, I was about to say
always
that.
feel like I've had to have a fairly even spread over months. There were a couple of busier months, a couple of quieter months. But I feel like this year, for me to go for a month with no inquiries and then get 4 in a day just seems to be how the pattern is at the moment.
Yeah.
And whether that's
so weird,
but it doesn't seem to be that. It's not like, I post a particular piece of content or something happens and that prompts inquiries. It just seems to be that sporadic.
Yeah, you got that Studio Ninja thing that tells you what months the leads come in. It literally just goes spikes in. I think mine is this year is July, and then August none.
Yeah,
literally, I don't think. Well, maybe
it
one
hits
or
the
something.
ground,
It's just,
and then shoots to the moon again.
And
it's
back up
like
again in
that,
September. It's like maybe that's school holidays or something, but like it just seems to be
But I
sparking
feel like
in
it has
random
been. That's
places.
it. It's been a lot more sporadic this year. So I think it's the inquiries again. There's been a lot more of like trust in the process of going like, yes, they will come. Yes, they will come. And again, from maybe not needing those huge wealths of volume, knowing I only need probably 25, 30 bookings for the year.
Yeah.
It's not as if I'm chasing big numbers, so I need a high volume of inquiries.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of, you get to that point where you wonder where your student is broken. You're like, how can I have gone for this long with no inquiries?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, so you get a flurry, and it's just really odd. And I just feel like that as a beast is changing. So it's just keeping up with the change.
I don't know if you've ever got to the point before where you've got onto your contact form and filled it out, hoping that
I've done that 2 or
works.
3 times this year because I've been worried that Studio
Is it
Ninja's
working?
disattached it, or I've gone into Ninja to check the leads bar.
Yeah.
Where normally, obviously, I get an email notification to say, "Oh, this lead's popped in."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Was that stop telling me?" Like, because it's just
Yeah. No, it's very
And
strange.
I guess that's just patterned, isn't it?
But on the opposite side, like you said, you might get 4 in a day and be like, "What's going on here?" Like, yeah.
But annoyingly, I had one instance this year where I had 3 in a day, and they were all for the same date, which is spooky.
That's
I had 3
weird.
inquiries on
Yeah.
the same Sunday, all for the same date in May next year.
Maybe they're all using some sort of guide that notifies them when they should be booking their photographer or something.
It was so weird. Annoying it was. At that time, I was already booked for that Sunday, so I had to turn all 3 of them away. 10 days after that couple cancelled.
Oh.
And then by the time I went back to the other 3, they'd all booked someone else. So then I still don't have a wedding for that Saturday now. And despite having 4 inquiries in however long for the same damn day.
Mate.
Again, that's just the joys, isn't it, of
Yeah,
what we do.
you never know
Yeah.
what's going to happen, do you? And who's going to cancel and whatnot. So, yeah.
And again, but then I could get through Christmas, and somebody could come on in January or February and be like, by any chance, have you got the bank holiday free? Because nobody else has, because they've all booked it out, and I'll get a booking then.
My May bookings tend to come in quite late. I don't know what it is about May, but people in May book late.
Particularly when you've got, like, say, this was for that Saturday on the last bank holiday, which is normally one of my first weekends to book out.
Yeah.
Because it's a popular one, so I've got to believe that it will come back around.
I think I've got April off this year.
Nice.
That's a weird one. Or is it March? Yeah, I think it might be April because I'm just kind of looking at it like.
I've got January and February off this year, and I couldn't be more excited about it. My first wedding is until the end of March, and last year, or this year, should I say, I've shot weddings in every month of the year, which has been great for financial kind of turnover. But in terms of having maybe longer periods of rest or time to get to those jobs like website jobs and taxes jobs and kind of more admin-y stuff, I just haven't got to it because I've always had an edit pile.
Yeah, true.
So I'm actually really looking forward to having 2 or 3 months of quieter time to get into that stuff.
You can actually get into the stuff that you were talking about earlier, like getting into the website without thinking you've got an edit pile or having to do it in an evening or anything like that.
Yeah, so, I'm hoping that all told it will kind of come back to bigger kind of clarity and the rest of it. But I guess we've spoken a lot about our own businesses, but I guess to kind of maybe begin to wrap up, because we are getting quite long into the episode now, that I think we should probably talk about the pod as well. Because again, like we said at the start, we did 19 episodes last year. It was our very, very first year. This year we've done 24, which is pretty good. I think that's really solid to release every other week, knowing that we've got a few left. I think we've only ever missed one delivery day.
One delivery day this year.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, that is good. And I think we released the week after that rather than wait
so that
2
episode
weeks.
didn't get missed completely. It just went out a week later and we've carried on.
Yeah.
So I think to do that, to have, say, 4 guest episodes so far, that means 20 episodes of just us. A mixture of catch-ups, topics. Yeah, it's
one of those things. I think if we know that if we had guests on every week, if we did weekly, if we posted on Instagram all the time, that we could grow this podcast and it'd be, we could make it big. But I think it's always been a bit more of like a passion project. Like it's something that we love doing. And would we love doing all of that? Probably not. It'd probably make it a lot more stressful.
I think, and so much of what we do in our own businesses feeds this podcast. That I would never want to put too many more eggs in this, that our own business got neglected. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to scale it back anymore, because then I like routine of something. If I follow a podcast and I know that it's every fortnight, I'm checking that day that it should be released to know it's there. So I think to have something which is I think we've really found a groove of what's a manageable schedule for us this year. And even amongst both of us at times where maybe you've had a busy month that I've had quieter, or I've had a busy month that you've been quieter, we've still managed to find a day to make that pattern work. Yeah, definitely. And we find a day because we like doing it, and it never seems like a slog turning up and I've got to record a pod today or whatever. Even in some of the busier months this year, it's just nice to turn up and just like set the world to rights for a bit. I've put it in. You block it out in the calendar the same way that you would a shoot or a meeting or anything like that. It's like, we're doing pod today. That's it. Yeah. So it's just one of those things that's really enjoyable. We egg each other on a lot, and what you don't see is what we put out 2 1-hour episodes, but we're here like pretty much like 10 till 4, 10 till 5, just chatting, and you see like 2 hours of it. So it's nice that we get that, and sometimes you need that as well at times in the industry. I think in heights of the year, we've both probably had times where we've just needed someone who does the similar job that we do, understands those issues, and we've both probably had moments of crisis where we've lent on each other walking down to Tesco's to get our meal deal, and I think having you or having that every 2 to 3 weeks, and I think it's definitely saved probably a lot of my well-being or worries that I've had in other years of my business, just to have someone to kind of deflect that off to, or someone that when I start to talk about something, you go, remember we started to speak about that last week, so there's a constant conversation going with it. And both of our partners are hugely supportive in what we do, but they don't do what we do, and so it's nice to have someone equally as close to that, to have that. So I think that kind of level of feedback or support from each other outside of the pod, but because of the pod. So when you go home from work and your partner's like, how was your day? And you kind of, it was a bit boring, did this, that and the other. But then when we talk to each other, we can go on for like hours about how our day was. Or the smallest thing as well. Literally, so we think it's going really well. It's exactly how we want it to be. So let us know if you're enjoying it as well. And Or also, if there's something which is kind of not bothering you or frustrating you. I was going to say, feedback, but I don't really want to. I wish that, you did this, or you elaborate on that a bit more, or I guess the schedule was this. And I'm sorry, last time I said this, we got 2 or 3 emails going, I wish you'd go weekly. That's not going to happen. I'll tell you now, we're not going to go weekly. We're really comfortable with the schedule that we keep. But in terms of the length of episode or the things that we cover or whatever, that feedback is fully.
It's always helpful. Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Amazing. Shall we move on to highs and lows of the years to finish it off?
I think that's a nice.
There's a goals bit at the bottom, but we'll go highs and lows first
Yes.
of this year, and then we'll go into our goals for next year, and I'll round it up, I think.
Yeah.
So just to recap then, like my highs, the time that I've got, I feel richer now because I've got more time. Social wise, like I feel like my social life is a lot better because I've got more weekends free, because I'm doing less weddings, like less corporate stuff, blocking out evenings and weekends, doing paddle, and then obviously things like Coda as well, which have Coda and the Coactive, which have dramatically improved my social life in terms of work friends as well. Like obviously, like meeting lots of people through there who I now do like co-working days with and go out for dinners with and stuff like that. And just feel more better. Like I feel better than ever this year in terms of the things that actually really matter. So that's probably my first high, really.
Amazing. So I think mine's the first high that I listed straight away was hosting the 2 workshops with you.
Yeah.
Like as much as we spoke at length about kind of finding your stride in work, I feel that education or giving back to people, I've always been a person that's wanted to help others.
Yeah.
Or I feel that sometimes it took me a long time to get over certain hurdles in the industry because maybe when I came in, people were less helpful. So that's something that I've always been really kind of wanting to do. I feel that hosting the 2 workshops this year, for as much effort as they were, how sort of nerve-wracking it was to stand up there and do that, the feedback that we've had from people that came and actually delivering that content, the feeling that I had and the kind of the high that gave me, or that like that kind of just the feeling of kind of starting to give back and knowing that there was a response to that, and maybe that we could push towards more education, whether by ourselves or with the pod in future. That was definitely one of my big highlights for this year, is actually kind of doing the education thing.
Yeah,
starting.
That was really fun. And like you, like I've always seen myself as like wanting to help people, and like I think I'm quite a good teacher as well.
Yeah.
That and watching people that walk away with their notepads and their brains filled, like big smiles on their face, feeling inspired, wanting to just go into the next room and just get it all done now. Like,
and
that's
seeing people make changes as well. Like we've had a couple of messages from people that actually have made changes and seen differences, or can start to almost, they came to us really lost with not knowing it needed fixing, but not knowing how.
Yeah.
And now to feel they've got this toolkit and have started to make these repairs and changes.
Yeah.
That's really rewarding to see. Not only that they can then go and grow their businesses, but know that they're taking advice that we've told them. There is something really gratifying about that.
Yeah. Agreed. My next high was destination wedding, because I just thought that was like, as much as I had the anxiety of it and thought maybe beforehand it wasn't worth it, like looking back, I only remember the good stuff. And that's, I think, what matters. And I'm proud of myself for doing it, and I would like to do more. Again, I always say, and I still maintain this, I would only do it if it's a place I want to go and it makes sense for me. I wouldn't just do a destination wedding in the middle of nowhere just just to say it was a destination wedding. But I really enjoyed that, and it was definitely a high for this year for me.
I think it came at the right time of the year for you, and also the right time in your career. Let's say you didn't just jump on a destination because it was where it was, but it challenged you in a way that you shot in a way that was different to how you normally did.
Yeah.
But you really rose to that occasion, relished the challenge, and made probably a landmark film in your career. I think, because of it. So I think that film, again, and I know the feedback you've gotten not just from myself and the couple mainly, but from other sort of videographers going, I've seen this, and that's that. That is a really nice nod to kind of sit kind of amongst your industry, to know that you made a film
that people remember.
Really remember.
I like that. Yeah, that's definitely a high.
Cool. I think for me, the next one kind of lends on from the workshop thing, and the thing we said earlier, is feeling more confident with the direction and style that my work is going in. I feel like I felt brave enough to post that work this year and really stand by it, and the fact that it's been well received. I think that's really kind of set me on this path of, yes, this is the direction that my work should be going in, and this is where it's going to go in the future. And I feel more positive about the vision of where my work's going to go than ever this year, where, say, I think a lot last year I was kind of making a little bit of lots of things, kind of heading one way, but not really kind of having much conviction of standing behind any of it. I was like, well, what do you like?
Yeah.
Where this year I've been more selfish with that, going, this is what I love. Do you love it too?
Yeah.
And
you're fully in now. Yeah.
Yes.
You had your toes dipped in, but now
I've fully jumped in, and very much, really, really, really glad and feeling really confident with the work that I'm making.
Yeah, agreed. And then my last one is obviously the awards. We've already spoken about that, so I won't go too much into it, but it's, again, something that has been a goal since obviously the first time I entered, and then just kept going and I'm really happy they've won this year. So, yeah.
And again, watch your space for the Nationals.
The Nationals, yeah.
You never know. Dare to dream, Chris, dare to dream. And I think the last 2 goals that I have, or my last 2 highs, kind of do link back to work, but are more personal goals, is that I celebrated 10 years of marriage this year, and I actually managed to get away on a summer holiday, which is something which has never happened in pretty much the 10 years of my marriage. I've never gone away in the summer. I've always gone away at the ends of the year. But to feel that kind of at a place where I could walk away from my business at the height of summer to have some family time, I'm hoping that's kind of set a precedent now for hopefully say some kind of building more of that into future years. Because it was 100% worth it. Just going away actually the hot time of the year in the summer and the rest of it. And I felt that in some ways going away just for a week in the middle of season probably refreshed me sometimes more than the longer holidays that we've had at the ends of the season, because it was at a time that I really, really needed it.
It's also a mindset thing of like, oh no, I can't go away. It's wedding season.
Yeah.
Like just take yourself out. It's still work at the end of the day as much as you enjoy it.
And freeing yourself to do that and I'm kind of doing it and knowing that, my editing pile didn't pile up or things the wheels didn't fall off. That was a really big kind of one for me. And then the last one that I've want to put in is obviously is my wife bought me an ice bath for Christmas last year. And I'm almost at the point where I've done 100 dips this year now, which I haven't added up how many minutes that meant I've spent in cold water. But doing that alone has been one of the biggest things that I've done for my productivity and my well-being this year. Like being able to get to my desk, I've never found anything to make me change my habits of procrastination more than getting in cold water.
Yeah.
And that is something again which I think will become a lifestyle change for me now. It won't just be a fad that's going to sit on my deck outside. I'm going to continue to get into that cold water.
No, that's good, and I can tell you can tell you really enjoy it as well, because even on holiday you're like, I kind of missed that sort of thing.
I was taking cold showers in the end, which aren't quite the same, but I have really missed it, and it is a really a solid thing. So, and again, I think it has helped by work sometimes to know before you've got a wedding in the morning to kind of have a dunk in there and kind of sit with your thoughts for like a few minutes in the cold. That's really helped kind of say with that process that we talked about earlier about kind of emptying yourself and getting ready for the day ahead.
It looks like a really cool thing to do, and I feel like it would definitely improve. Do it. But I don't know if I can make myself feel that uncomfortable for that period of time.
For me, anyone knows, I've put the heating on today, especially because I knew Chris was coming because he hates the cold. So I believe it when I see it. If you actually nominate him to do anything which involves cold.
Literally. But on that topic as well, I didn't put it down, but finding paddle was definitely one of my highs. I know it's not necessarily a work thing, but going on that topic of finding something that you enjoy, that's like, and for those that don't know, paddle is it's like a smaller version of tennis. So it's like a
tennis squash hybrid, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. So imagine a tennis court, shrink it by like a few feet on each side, and then put glass all around the tennis court. So essentially you play with rackets that are like hard all round, there's no sort of net on them, and a tennis ball. And the ball can sort of bounce off the back wall as well. So you can bounce it on the opponent's side, and then it can bounce off the back wall, then they can return it. So it's a very forgiving sport. It's very social. If you started playing tennis against someone who's quite experienced, you would just be stood there and you get nothing. But if you play paddle, at least you have a chance of returning the ball every now and then. So, so I've really enjoyed that, and I think it's just being able to find a sport that's quite social and do that and have something to again take me away from
to start a
doing
sport
work
in your 30s. Like I feel like people start playing football as a kid and then stick with it or grow with their team or do whatever. But to go and start a brand new sport at like an older age and then finding new friends for it and then learning the skill level of that, I think that's really commendable, and obviously it's paid off.
It's a little bit daunting. The instructor said to the instructor, like, because he was playing with me the other day, and I was like, is there anything I can improve on, mate? And he was like, you're starting a racket sport at 31. Do you really expect that you're gonna? He's like, you're gonna find it really hard. A lot of these people have been playing tennis and paddle since they were like 5 years old.
From other sports as well, or similarly, they play from playing squash or
tennis or even paddle, because a lot of them come from like Spain or whatever, and have lived in Spain or Dubai or Portugal, where it's much bigger. And they've all played for a long period of time. And he was like, mate, you've been playing for what, 4 months? You played 10 games. Like, it's not about what you're doing wrong at the moment. It's just about getting used to the paddle.
So even the fact that you're holding your own is an achievement in itself. Yeah. But it's fun though, isn't it? It's nice to learn new things or to feel that you've got something else to get good at.
Yeah, that feeling's good. Yeah.
Amazing. So now maybe we should have finished on the highs, but we're going to move on to maybe the things that weren't so good.
Well, there's not so many of them, so we were all right. But, and a lot of them we've mentioned, I think, again, like earned slightly less this year. It's been a low. Again, I haven't really felt it as such because probably earning more, I probably spent more money on stuff I didn't need, because that's just the kind of person I am. But it's obviously never, as an analytics driven person, kind of the first time I figured out that I was losing money, or not losing money, that I had less than last year, I got a bit disappointed in myself. But then I realised it's actually been for the benefit of next year and the future. So
I think it's always, I think every year, so I've been in business, you always like to think you've earned more than the less, and it's only one marker, isn't it, of growth, where the fact that you've grown in so many other ways, but they're not as physical of, I've physically earned more money, it's hard to think that it has been a backward step when maybe it hasn't. So again, I've covered my notes. Not going to talk about it. I said I'm at the point where I'm at that point in my career where I've been offered too many good opportunities that I've still felt the need to say yes to all of them, which then has obviously left me to feeling overwhelmed and overworked at times. So maybe I just need to sometimes be mindful of the bigger picture of, yes, is it going to be a cool shoot on the day, but how much other stuff does that entail, and that going to impact?
It's that excitement and that feeling of like, I want to, that sounds really good, I can be really creative with that, but then realising what the effect it's going to have on
the arms and legs that kind of, the after effect of it, for sure,
And the only other thing is I've put in my lows is that one of my goals is kind of to expand on my products and my education side. Obviously we did the workshops, so that's been a good part of that. But I think it was like a year and a half ago now where I released that contract.
Was it? I was going to say, was that in this year?
It was last year, with the intention of, growing that contract to more products and doing extra stuff, and I just never did it. And like, that's definitely something that I still want to do, which means it's not been a problem with my motivation to do it. But I just think I need to crack on and do it this winter.
And also with the sales that you've had of the contract have been positive.
Yes.
Prove that there is an audience for it, so that it is an avenue to maybe, or a fairly easy way of making up some of that lost income without taking too much more time. Once you launch it and it sits there, it's going to make money for you whilst you're playing paddle. Which there's not many things in our industry, in our business, which you can say, like, product is, again, a good way that the more you sell, the more you make without...
I mean, business-wise, and it's just another way of doing education without having to be there all the time and time, use up more of that time that you have in a year, basically. But I think my aim was kind of to do it in April, May, I think May time, was to do all of my, start creating products. But then we had the workshop. And then after the workshop, I just redesigned my whole website, didn't I? I spent all my time on that. So I didn't get the slot that I designated, but next year will definitely be the year for that, I think.
Cool.
So.
And I think, the last one, and even after listening to last night's made me feel even worse, is the fact that I said this last year and haven't done it, is that, again, that being so busy, the things that have suffered because of it are time just resting, time going for runs, doing stuff like that. The fact that I've managed to keep my ice bath for myself, that's good. But for next year, I think that taking some solid time to improve my physical and mental health so that I can probably give more to my work, I need that clear balance. That's one of my main priorities for next year is, again, if that comes at the sacrifice of maybe a few more pound in the bank or things like that, I'm willing to accept that, and overall to be standing
a happier person,
at the end of the year, maybe not feeling as old or kind of as physically kind of impaired as I am at the moment. It's
good. It's good to sort of acknowledge that as well, isn't it? So, and just know that. So
I guess now the very last thing is to
sorry, the camera battery's gone as well for those who are watching.
much in the same way that we set goals last year, which have obviously carried us through this episode to see how we've compared. We're going to set a last 2 or 3 goals for the year. And I encourage that you guys at home do the same as well, even if they are just written in the back of your diary or a notebook or something. They don't have to be anything super hard and fast, but just kind of some goals of kind of things you would like to sit here at this time next year and go, I did that, or I'm well on the way to achieving that. I think it's a really good way. Like, don't get too despondent if you don't achieve them, but acknowledge that kind of direction that you are headed is really, really important.
100%. I think having goals for the year ahead is important. Otherwise, you're just mindlessly filming and taking weddings until you don't know what or why you're doing it or what's next, sort of thing. My first big thing is that I want to do something next year that's quite big in terms of the education thing. I want to step it up a bit. And I know I just said that I haven't done anything, and now I want to do something big. But I feel like I'm at the point now where it won't be a conference or a workshop or anything like that, I don't think. And I don't know what it will be yet. I have some ideas which I don't really want to go too much into at the moment. But no, I just want to do something that, like a project in the education space that I think this is my thing that I've put my stamp on,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. So that's one big goal for next year. And I think I struggled when writing these because maybe it's because I'm still in the season, I'm still editing like the backlog, and maybe it's because I'm feeling relatively positive. So my goals for next year aren't as dramatic as maybe for this year. But yeah, that's one thing.
Rather that, or you're further along that journey. I think you made such big strides this year that not every year has to be seismic years of growth. I think you've got, again, both have really set kind of new ways of finding balance this year. So a continuation of that, I think, is like not every year has to be a year that you 360 your business and like half your body weight or whatever and all those things. Those years don't come along every year because they can't afford to. So I don't think it's feel wrong for not saying that they're big goals.
Exactly. But
my first one, I think, is much off the back of your same, is after the success of the workshops, it's given me confidence to also begin to offer some education of my own. I have a half-built education page on my website that never got launched, and some ideas of things that I would love to be able to do. And so again, I think after kind of the workshops, giving us some belief that people do actually want it, and there is some value in what I think I have to. The advice I have to give. That's one of my main goals is to finish that page and to launch it next year.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good, and this is the time to do it as well. Off the back of those workshops and feeling motivated from hosting those and knowing that you can do it. All you've got to do is make people know that other people know that you can do it as well. Yeah.
That's it. It is adding a new string to your bow, isn't it? Although we've dipped our toes this year into becoming educators as well as podcasters and photographers and videographers. Yeah. It's kind of really kind of doing something to kind of solidly jump in on that side.
Yeah. The other thing I've put is I want to kind of reduce my camera gear down a bit. And look, I'm never going to be the person who travels minimal, who travels with a 35 and 85 and calls it a day. I'm not that person. I like to have the kitchen sink on for work and in personal life as well. Going on holiday, I always unpacking everything. But what I kind of mean by that is I want to deal with less things. So like part of obviously wanting to buy that 28-70 is so that I can just focus on shooting for that most of the day and not thinking about, I've got one camera on one side, one camera on the other side, I've got my sling bag full of all the other stuff. And I'd quite like to just have that and go minimal and focus more on the other stuff.
To be more robust and have less moving parts, keep changing lenses and stuff. I think that's going to be...
Yeah, and with the lights having the lights aren't any different, but they're smaller, so I get to take one less bag with me, and that's reducing my gear, in my opinion. So that's another thing I wanted to do this year as well. Yeah.
And again, I've got one kind of related to that as well. Is I'm going to kind of be the opposite. Is I feel that I over the last couple of years have got really, really good at, or really kind of comfortable with my setup of rocking 2 cameras, 2 lenses, and pretty much doing that all day. And I feel like I've got to sometimes dance floors this year where I've really struggled. Because I'm kind of like, I want to stay minimal. I don't want to carry loads of light stands and off-camera flashes, and that's not really me. And I feel like in terms of what I've produced has been okay, but there's been a real struggle sometimes to get that stuff in the evening. Where the weddings that I've worked with you or a couple of other videographers where they've had lights and stuff in the evening is that just make getting that good stuff a little bit easier for myself. And if it means a little bit more effort in, say, carrying some LEDs or having that extra lens, I think maybe if I'm going to be doing slightly less weddings, it's feeling much more in control of every part of the day. And if that means carrying a little bit more kit, having no gear isn't the answer to everything. If it's meaning that I'm having to work harder with what I've got in the end. So it's again, I don't want to go and carry loads and loads of stuff, but adding a couple of really key pieces of equipment which are going to make big differences to the way that I shoot is definitely something I want to do next year. Yeah,
it's identifying what impact it's going to have on your work. And if you went out and bought, I don't know, another lens, just for the sake of it, and it might not have any impact on the final result of your work, but that going out and getting some lights is going to have a huge impact on one part of the day.
That's it. I could easily go, I want to make the full switch to Leica and spend 30 grand and get a whole new camera system. But probably for the most part, it wouldn't make too much of a difference because I'm still shooting on a full frame body with a 35 and an 85. And you could do that. It's just being kind of really, really decisive. And also, I think by getting to the point where I'm coming towards maybe the darker end of the season. In terms of light, and also having edited all of my weddings of the year, you start to see, these are the places that I'm really having to work hard, or these are the parts today that I'm really struggling in, or they're maybe my more weaker parts of the gallery. What can I actually do to make my life easier in those moments? Yeah.
So we spoke about this in a previous pod as well, about how you want to focus now more on the extra bits that you can add on top of your package and do a little bit less weddings.
That I think is my final goal for the year, is that this year I've done 36 weddings, with again probably about 31 or 32 of those being full days, and then the other 4 or 5 being shorter days.
Yeah.
So I think for me that's the really easy way, that knowing that where my story, I want to be more involved than ever. Those weddings where I've only been part of the days for 2, 3, 4 hours, I don't get that chance to be as involved.
Yeah.
So for me, that's a really easy way to kind of lose the shorter hour weddings and just do one more full day that I can go on the journey with for the same money. That's appealing. And then again, cutting back, that I think next year I really want to try and stick to only 30. So that would be 5 or 6 less than this year.
Yeah.
But then try and make that money up on the other side by trying to make sure that at least half of those people buy an album from me. Like I use Big Time, but I haven't set up the simple sales in it. I've sold some prints through that this year, but really trying to hone again those products, selling prints and albums and deliverables, which I think are really, really synonymous with the style of shooting that I do.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm just not being a very good salesman this year and encouraging people to do that with me.
That's it. You already do it. You're just not directing people to do it at this point.
So that's one of the other big.
All it is a shoot a ninja workflow, right? Just to be like, don't forget, you can print.
Big Time have those workflows built in.
Oh, do they? Okay.
For like simple sales. I just need to activate them and change the email so they match my voice.
Yeah.
Again, probably a day's work that could make me
a lot of money and next year.
A lot of money.
Yeah. That's good. And my last one really is to do better with less. So sometimes I feel like when it rains, maybe, or things like run behind, I see the quality of my films, or don't drop a bit, or I don't have the motivation to edit it as much. And I guess that's the same with everyone, right? But like, I want to be able to produce consistent content despite like weather difficulties and things like that. And again, like, it comes down to brand and what I enjoy doing and things like that. Like, I don't post rainy weddings at all anymore. I sort of I've just literally just put up a thing, like, do you know what I mean? A wall in my head of like, I don't want to post that because it looks rainy and it's not what I want on my grid. But I want to make a concerted effort to make them look better. And that started with a video I posted the other day, which you watched this morning. Yeah. And that wedding was raining for 99% of the day. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know
it from the film.
And they will know it watching it back in the long film. Yeah. But for the highlight, like, it looks like a really, like, you know.
And there were elements of it where they were outside. Yeah. But you didn't really see brollies or drizzle, or you didn't. There was none of that like backlit kind of like rain and stuff. It still just told a very nice story of a more grey day, I guess. But
you know what, like, the sun during the dinner, like, the sun set, well, the sun, there was no sun, but it got dark really quickly, and we went to grab the couple, and the couple took a while, and then it was dark by the time we did the couple shoot. And I think by that time, normally I'd be like, I'm not going to get anything here. I'll come out for like to show face.
Be polite.
yeah. And like get a few shots if I can. But I really put the effort in that time to be like, I've got the photographer to do like some strobe flashing of the couple as they were walking towards me. I was like, this is going to look cool, and put it in black and white.
They remember that, because especially if she's shooting in those moments. Then, that is part of the day, and they'll remember that. But it's almost you going, well, that is equally as valid to me to film this stuff, and it has a look to it, rather than going, that's a photographer's time, I don't need to film this.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. So just a little bit more effort, or trying to find ways to make those rainy ones just look a bit better for. That's it.
Which again, overall consistency, or not sweating the small stuff. Like, you can change the things that you can change, can't you? But you can't change the weather. Yeah. But you shouldn't let that kind of compromise the film that you make. Yeah. I guess that kind of links in with mine a little bit as well, doesn't it? It's just kind of just wanting to be better, really. Yeah. I think that's mainly the old idea of doing this episode and setting goals, isn't it? Is because we don't want to get stale in our businesses, or just go, I want another year the same as the last. There's always something you can do to push on. And want to be better.
100%. Do your own year in review. It's like I think it's really healthy to look
send
back.
Them to us if you want. If you would feel more accountable, then just write a few things and stick them in our messages, and then
come back to me a year later.
We'll come and shout at you when you don't do them the same way that we work to each other. So I think now this is easily going to be the longest episode that we have ever done. So I think we won't take up any more of your time, apart from just to say thank you for not only listening to this marathon episode, but to every other episode that we've put out this year. Our Spotify Wrapped numbers don't lie, that there's marginally more of you watching us and listening to us now than there was at the start of the year.
Yeah, there's a lot more.
And we are truly, truly grateful for that.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Again, like, keep messaging us and sort of opening the conversation, because we really enjoy it, and that's what we're here for. It's been fun.
I've said a really good thing. We always say see you in the next one. We should
see you in the new year.
See you in the next year.
That's what. Okay, see you in the next year. Okay, all right.
Really?
Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I've just realised as well, there's a little button at the top of the Spotify somewhere that gets you to rate the podcast. Do that. Rate us 5 stars if you can. I've never asked you to do that because I didn't know it was there. But but thanks for listening, and see you in the next year.